Is it time?
It is time for us to do what we have been doing, and that time is every day.
We'll know in a very short period of time, but it looks like it could be something that will be not good. Believe me, not good.
I see issue with that. And again, hey.
You're not going to be able to insult your way to the presidency. That's not going to happen.
I don't know who created Pokemon Go, but I'm trying to figure out how we get them to have Pokemon go to the polls.
I'm Ted Cruz, and my pronoun is kiss my ass.
So when you think about it, there is great significance to the passage of time in terms of what we need to do to lay these wires, what we need to do to create these jobs.
America is a nation that can be defined in a single word. I was going to foot.
Not good. Believe me, not good.
Hello, everyone. Hello, dissidents. Welcome, one and all, to a Thursday noontime edition of the Do Dissidents podcast. My name is Keaton Weiss. Russell Dobular's on his way. He just messaged me. Got a vamp for a minute. All right. Says I got a camp for a minute. Now he says I got a vamp for a minute. I already am camped. Camped out right here at my desk. Thank you guys very much for being here. Got a great crowd in here to start things off. 558 strong in the Rumble chat. We got crowd filing in on YouTube. What do we got here? 927 strong in the YouTube chat to start things off. Wow, what a crowd. Thank you all for being here today. Appreciate that very much. Apologies for some confusion on the newsletter side of things. Rumble Studio was down today, so you notice you don't see the Rumble Studio logo in the upper left-hand corner of the screen. That is because their system was down, and I kind of forgot how to set up the system the old way, and so I made a couple of mistakes. And so if you're on the newsletter, sorry, we sent out the wrong link at first, but now we got the right one in there. So thank you all very, very much for being here. Got a terrific crowd filing in so far. Please smash that like button. Please smash that subscribe button. Smash that follow button over on Rumble. Appreciate that very, very much. All right, we got some Rumble rants that we'll take in that came in before the itinerary. So I see Russell's shadow now. W. Law's Gen X card is revoked for not recognizing Van Halen's Pan Not Ma, the song of summer of 1984. Amongst the 9-year-olds of South Jersey. I'm not unsubscribing, so I must be long and girthy. That's right. You are. And he would have been 15 at that time. Tortoise Toad, apologies to Thomas Dolby, indicting me to science, beep, beep, boop, indict me to science. Not now that Brandon's pardoned me. Good heavens, Rand Paul, you're an a-hole. Thank you very much. Appreciate that. All right, got to unmute your microphone.
When did I not recognize Panama?
Well, you didn't say anything.
What happened? I know the song.
What happened? Your coffee took too long?
Yeah, because you interrupted me.
Yeah, it's really hard.
I had everything timed very tightly.
No, it's interesting. Brewing a pot of coffee really interferes with the vocal mechanism of talking on the phone to somebody.
No, because you called me right before I started grinding the beans. So I was not grinding the beans because I was trying to wrap up the conversation.
Oh, so you grind the beans fresh every brew?
Yep.
Oh, wow.
That was why.
So you didn't think I'd be able to hear you?
Yes.
Or you me?
Exactly. Yes.
Interesting. All right. You got to let me know that next time. I think the assumption is that I think it's fair to assume that beans are pre-ground. That's fair to assume. You have to note otherwise.
I used to do that, but it does actually taste better if you grind your own.
Yeah, it does taste better. There's that gas station chain, Speedway. They have where whenever you get a coffee, they grind it right before you hit the button on the coffee machine. And it grinds it for you. Yeah, it's very good.
Yeah. No,
Keep in mind, when you move out to Buffalo, Speedway is the best coffee.
You know what? I will say this. This is one of the reasons I would even consider moving to Buffalo. The food is freaking good, man. The food is good, like very good, very good. Like what you'll have to watch out for if you live there is not only is the food good, the portions are insane because people aren't paying $20,000 a month for the lease on their cafe.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. You do
No,
get more.
it's like, dude,
you do get more.
You order some corned beef hash. It's like,
well, it's very hearty. Yeah, it's hearty food out there. That's what they're known for sure. All right, folks. So we got a lot to get to today, so we're going to get started. But just a little plug for a certain event coming up, courtesy of the Cornell West campaign. In case any of you guys have $999 to spare, you can, I guess, help.
We want to help Brother Cornell.
Pay off those campaign debts. Russ got this text apparently. So what was
this?
You
didn't get this text, or you're not on the list?
I guess not. No.
Yes, Cornell West for president. Good morning. We're hosting an exclusive 90. No one told them the election is over, apparently. We're hosting an exclusive 90-minute happy hour in Midtown this Sunday, January 26th, 4:20 to 5:50. That's very specific. They got a discount on that slot.
Yeah, they probably had exactly that much time to fill between appointments.
With Israel Lee Armstead. I didn't have time to look this up. Who is that?
Do
you know who that is? I have no idea either. A $999 donation. You see, my brothers tell me that if you make it $999, they don't think of it as $1,000.
That's right.
It secures 2 drinks, an exclusive Justice for All hoodie, and support for the movement. Only 17 spots are available.
So that means they got 17 grand worth of campaign debt they still got to pay off. That's what that means.
Yeah.
A $999 donation for a hoodie and 2 drinks. Now, it's a 90-minute event, okay? The event's 90 minutes. So, there's only so much you could drink in 90 minutes. And people aren't going to go to this to tie one on. So, you can't make it open bar for $999. Like, for $1,000, you can't just say open bar, all you can drink for 90 minutes. What's the most someone's going to have? 5? What, you're going to cut them off at 2 drinks? What, cash bar past 2 drinks for $999? So, $1,000 gets you 2 gin and tonics and a hoodie left over from the campaign, the rest of which they're going to ship to Burkina Faso the next day if they can't move them. Like that's for $1,000. That's $1,000. A hoodie, an obsolete old hoodie, and 2 drinks.
Yeah, man. At least you could get like a nice steak dinner.
Yeah. I mean, $1,000
steak dinner in an open bar,
2 drinks and a hoodie for $1,000. God damn. I mean, you got to have open bar for $1,000. You can't have you get 2 drinks for $1,000. It's a 90-minute event. How much people are going to drink?
And also, Cornell, it's not hard to get to Cornell. It's not like, oh my God, this is a really rare opportunity to meet Cornell West, assuming that's something people care enough about to pay $1,000 for to begin with.
Right.
Cornell, he's all over the place. When I went to see him at Harlem, they didn't even rate that event high enough to give it security.
Right.
There weren't even any cops there, man. You just walk up. He was right there, man.
So that's got to be like a campaign debt thing, right? You just got to pay some of that back. I mean, that has to be. What the hell else could that possibly be?
That's probably a side piece thing.
Yeah.
He's got to pay her rent.
Yeah. I mean, who the hell knows? I mean, that's got to be, wow. So 17 spots available. We figure we would plug that. If any of you guys, have a spare $999 and you want to go get a hoodie and a couple drinks
with Dr. West. Yeah.
With Dr. West. Yeah, there you go. Good on you. All right, everybody. Well, once again, thanks for being here. Great crowd in here today. Really great crowd. What an audience. We got a great lineup. Got a great lineup of segments for you guys today. We're going to be breaking down some of Trump's executive orders that we haven't really been able to get to over the first few days of the week. And then we have, obviously, some more pretty fun stuff for you. It's a pretty fun lineup of shows today. So, all right, let's get started right about now. So, here is one of the executive orders that some people who need their mind strongly depeasantized were very, very happy about. President Trump signs order mandating federal workers show up in person for work. No more work from home. Fire emoji from Doge Designer. That's right. Here he is putting the pen to paper on this one.
Sir, the next item, as you announced in your speech, is a requirement that federal workers return to full-time in-person work immediately.
More traffic, yeah. More takeout coffee, yeah. More tolls. More tolls to pay. More gas bills. More babysitting. Woohoo! Wow. Wow. What a day. What a win.
More alienated children growing up without their parents at home.
Exactly, yeah. Wow, what a win. B-Funk says working at home has too many distractions and is unproductive. You can get as much work done with half as many employees that come in to work than those doing their laundry or taking a bath while working from home. I don't take baths. I work from home. I sit here and take a bath during the day.
Studies don't actually show that.
Yeah,
it shows people tend to be more productive because they'll do more work because they can do it whenever. It's more flexible.
Of course. They could do it whenever they want because they have more flexibility. You save a lot of commute time, especially if you're talking about federal workers and you're talking about people who work mostly in large cities. The time it takes to get to and from work, if you're navigating through a large city to do that, the expense of that. Of course, you're going to get more done if you're able to just stay home. That requires a little bit of discipline, but I thought, conservatives are all about discipline. Right? So,
bootstraps, baby.
Yeah, bootstraps. So what's wrong with that? This is great news. Permanent work from home is decimating productivity and the economy. Again, no, it's not. As a situational contingency, work from home is good, but the blade has rightfully been taken to permanent remote work. World Hall of Fun says Trump making the federal employees go back to the office in person is not only absolutely necessary, but also hilarious. Oh, yeah, it's hilarious. Can you believe these people have been working from home since COVID? Working from home, talk about a taxpayer drain. Get your ass back into the office. How is it a taxpayer drain? I would like that explained to me, how that's a taxpayer drain. Unless you're saying they shouldn't have jobs at all.
In what way are you paying for that as a taxpayer?
Yeah, if anything, it's a savings on the taxpayer because it's cheaper to work from home. And so you could probably pay them less if it's work from home than if they had to commute an hour in and an hour back unpaid. So I don't understand how that's a drain on the taxpayer. If you want to say these jobs shouldn't exist, okay, but that's not the question.
That's not the argument.
That's not the issue. The issue is how is work from home? Again, it's general emoting. It's people just making the assumption that people who work from home are lazy and don't actually work or want to work. And they have a real hang up about that, obviously. That's pretty obviously where they're coming from.
Yeah, well, this is the peasant mind. And this is, if you want to see what the great triumph and accomplishment of this particular wing of the oligarchy has achieved with this, remember, in the Bernie movement, whatever its flaws, whatever the flaw of its leader, what were you talking about? Where were you directing working class rage at what I would argue is its proper object? The oligarchs, the billionaire class. These billionaires, they don't pay their workers, and the workers would get angry, and that makes sense. That's a proper place to put that anger. Now, if people are broke, they're frustrated, they're tired, and you are the oligarchy, you are the billionaires, well, you got to direct that somewhere. So where do you direct it? You direct it at their neighbor. Right. Direct it at their neighbor who's got a half, you feel has a half a loaf more than you. This is basic primate psychology. They've done studies on chimpanzees. They understand fairness. Like if they perform a task and the third chimp gets an extra grape, they get upset about it. Why did he get an extra grape? I didn't get an extra grape. Now, you got these oligarchs have a mansion full of grapes, but they don't want you looking at that. They don't want you looking at that. They want you looking at this chimp over here and going, look at that one. That one's got a quarter extra grape than you. Ah, it's such manipulation, and it's so stupid. And this, you could understand with immigration why people would make the connection. Hey, our services, our city services are overstressed. These people are getting health care. I'm not getting free health care. You could understand the correlation there. This, what the fuck do you care if somebody works from home? That is a peasant mind. This is very much like in the totalitarian system that's not working well, when they would direct the people to be mad that Olav down the street is getting something he shouldn't get. Oh, yes, that one is very tricky. He has extra coupon. That's what you are right now.
Of course. It gets worse. You don't live where there's traffic, obviously. Why make people's quality of life worse? You speak of mental health problems in this country. It's easy to tell if someone isn't doing their job. That's right.
And then you
That's
fire
right.
them.
You're
That's
able
it.
to measure
That's it.
productivity if they're taking baths when they're supposed to be, taking calls about, why people's income taxes are late or whatever the fuck they're taking calls about,
It's
right?
all of this. It's all about directing their frustration, their rage, their feeling of powerlessness at people who also are powerless rather than people who are actually powerful.
Right. And exactly. And they feel more powerful when they're able to punch down at someone who they perceive to be less powerful than them. Now, this was a prize tweet, and this guy actually has apparently deleted his account since sending this. The only reason why I have this is because I thought this was so stupid that I texted this to Russ. And so I was able to pull the screenshot from my text. Otherwise, I wouldn't have been able to get this because this guy deleted his account. They now have to pay for transportation like the rest of us and actually use that office space that had been sitting empty for years now. Woe is them. Now, woe obviously spelled WOAH as opposed to woe is them. But woe was actually the least moronic word of that tweet. Yes. Okay, so you talk about attachment to your own suffering. Way back, I interviewed Megan Day, a great writer for Jacobin. She doesn't write anymore. They promoted their best writer out of a job. I think she's an editor there. That was the last I haven't spoken to her in years. But she made a very insightful point. She says a lot of Americans are very attached to their own suffering. They gain meaning through their suffering. They're proud of their suffering. They embrace their suffering. And when they sense that other Americans aren't suffering as much as they are, they resent that. They resent that because they take meaning in their suffering. And that's exactly what that is. They have to pay for transportation like the rest of us. Okay, some jobs require a commute and some don't. So if your job requires that you commute according to what the market dictates, then you have to pay for transportation. But where that's not necessary, why subject people to that additional expense?
It's
if
like
it's
on
not
general
necessary?
principles. It
How
makes
does
them
that.
Yeah. No, it keeps reminding me of the scene in Life of Brian where the guy's been chained to the wall for a decade and Brian gets spit on. He goes, "Oh, Chandler's pet, aren't you? I lay awake at night dreaming of being spat upon." Like that's what these people are like. Oh yeah, well you're gonna have to ride the bus now.
Yeah, exactly.
So what does that do for you? What does that
it do for anybody?
Society?
How is that good
What does that
politics?
do
What
for
is the
us?
payoff for society? To put people through an unnecessary hassle and expense of commuting to work when they don't have to. All right. So this is obviously so stupid a tweet that the person who tweeted it was compelled to delete their entire Twitter account. Okay. But you know who tweeted a very similar?
Why do you care if office space is sitting empty? Are you a commercial landlord?
Yeah. Are you an investor? Right. So this was obviously just a very stupid comment that prompted, like I said, this person to get rid of their entire handle. But a person who made a very similar point, who's still very much on Twitter, is Elon Musk. This is about fairness. It's not fair that most people have to come to work to build products or provide services while federal government employees get to stay home. And so I made the similar point that I just made. I said, so if the market dictates that some people need to commute but others don't, the government should make those who don't need to commute do so anyway because of fairness.
You know what that sounds like? That sounds like communism.
Was a genius. Yeah. Yeah. Sounds like something a communist dictator would do. I mean, this is as stupid It's literally as stupid as saying plumbers work with shit and they get shit on their clothes by the time they're done with work. So we're going to sign an executive order requiring all workers to smear shit on their clothes when they go home, in fairness to the plumbers who have to work with shit all day. It's literally, that's not an exaggeration. It is literally that stupid. That stupid.
Well, and you know what? I mean, I'm joking, but I'm not. That is essentially the critique that a lot of people like Elon will make about how they perceive communism. That it's a lot of trying to make everything fair and equal, and that's just completely unworkable. And you have to create these enormous bureaucracies to try to enforce it. And it doesn't really make any sense because you should let the marketplace dictate how to allocate capital and labor in that way. So why are you interfering with the market that way? Because in the private sector, they had people go home and they're counting their profits and losses, right? A lot of them, I have friends who still work half the week at home, some of them the whole week at home. If it wasn't working out, if they weren't productive, they would have ended it, right? So why did these companies not end it? Like, if you can demonstrate, oh, look, productivity fell off a cliff in these federal departments from people working at home. Okay. You notice they're not demonstrating that. They're not putting out. I would imagine if there were statistics like that, they'd be telling you about it. They're not, because I very much doubt that evidence is there. And it's beating up on the worker next to you, but so that you don't come after them.
And to the extent that like workers take breaks when they work from home, it's because they can afford to, and the work still gets done.
Right,
a lot of time is wasted at the fucking office. It's a ritual to go to the office. It's not necessary. It's one of the lessons of the pandemic is that you don't have to show up to work, 5 days a week. You could have a 4-day work week or have 3 days working in office, 2 days work from home or whatever. You work it out. But to just sign a blanket thing, everybody must show up. Why?
Yeah, you know what it is? The peasant, they don't want the peasants getting uppity.
Right. Exactly. No, that is true. So keto simple here. Here's a guy with a brain. I don't understand the disdain for work from home. They're more efficient, don't have to commute, better work-life balance. The government could cut back on some of its overspending by reducing its real estate footprint. Being anti-work from home is short-sighted. Nunya, similar. Work from home while taking care of toddlers, picking up children from school, grocery shopping, power walking is simply not effective. Those who worked long days at the office are still working. Those who were gossip hounds, internet surfers, and social media addicts are doing even less. If there's evidence of that,
where are the
numbers? Where are the numbers? Yeah. Where are the numbers? But I wanted to show this tweet because work from home while taking care of toddlers, picking up children from school, grocery shopping, power walking. So in other words, people can work for a couple hours and then drop the kids off at school and then come back and work a little bit more, maybe get some grocery shopping done, come out, work a little bit more. You know what that sounds like? That sounds efficient to me. It sounds efficient to me. It sounds like they're able to balance their work responsibilities with their family responsibilities. Once again, very strange for a pro-family values party to impose a 2-hour round trip unpaid commute on parents, which is less time with your kids. It's more time paying for childcare, which is already very, very, very costly. This is a terrible policy for families to impose a mandate that you show up at the office when you've been working for the last 3 years at home just fine. And those who aren't just fine, well, guess what? You get rid of them and you hire people who do it. There is no problem there. No problem whatsoever. Just amazing. Really, really incredible. How this is an example of anti-solidarity, like anti-solidarity, bizarro world solidarity, where you get workers to beat up on fellow workers for having it easier than them.
Well, what else are they going to do? They need to direct the working class's justified rage, anger, and despair somewhere. And if it doesn't get directed at their fellow workers through racism, through claims of DEI, through claims of homophobia, which we're going to get into, the left had the ball, and instead of really making a case, they made a grift. Because what both sides really have in common is they can't afford to talk about the real problem, because the real problem are their donors. Their donors pay them. They have to direct that working class rage at anything but themselves. And the place to direct their rage is at each other. The left, so-called left, the liberal class, has one approach to that, which Trump just largely undid with his executive orders and legislation. And this is the other side's approach to that. Oh, that one's getting more than you. It's still woke. It's just a different brand of it.
Yeah. Yep. Pretty pathetic stuff. All right. I might clip this separately. I might not. But this is another labor-related story in these first few days. Now, Donald Trump was asked specifically about his stance on H-1B visas. Last time we really got a soundbite from him on this was at New Year's Eve, when he said, I've always been for the visas. Elon Musk was there dancing right next to him. But here is Donald Trump taking a question from the press about where he stands on H-1B visas and why.
President, there's been some debate within your orbit over whether or not to keep or eliminate H-1B visas. What's your position on that? Do you want to keep H-1Bs or do you want to get rid of them?
I like both sides of the argument, but I also like very competent people coming into our country, even if that involves them training and helping other people that may not have the qualifications they do. But I don't want to stop. And I'm not just talking about engineers. I'm talking about people at all levels. We want competent people coming into our country. And HB1, I know the program very well. I use the program.
Okay, so not just engineers, so not just like the super talented tech people that Elon and Vivek were talking about bringing in. Let's see who else should come in on HB1.
Maitre d's, wine, experts.
Maitre d's and wine experts. Not enough maitre d's in America. We're not producing enough maitre d's, and our maitre d's are terrible. Our wine experts are terrible.
Yeah, no, we need to bring them in.
The American sommeliers, they're not cutting it. I had a glass of wine the other night. He said notes of cherry. I drank it. I said, this doesn't taste like cherry. This doesn't taste like cherry.
Anything like cherry.
He said it's low tannin. I say this tastes very high tannin to me. This tastes very high tannin to me. I think we need some. At least we need some French. We need some Italians coming over here. People who know wine. People who understand wine.
They stopped the HB1 waiters from coming in. They did a study in San Francisco. You had to wait 8 minutes for bread.
Yeah, yeah, right. 8 minutes for bread, and they forgot the olive oil. I had to ask them to go get the olive oil so I could dip it. I can't have a dry piece of bread. There's nothing worse than a dry piece of bread.
They bring the butter. It's hard as a rock. It's hard as a rock. They don't even soften it up to room temperature. You bring in a waiter from France. That butter is like butter.
Melts in your mouth like it's supposed to. Melts like butter, as they say. Yes. Who else? He's not done.
Even waiters, high quality waiters.
That's right.
You got to get the best people. Now, then you go into people like Larry, and he needs engineers, and Massa needs, and this gentleman needs engineers like nobody's ever needed engineers, right? So we have to have the quality people coming in. Now,
you walk into a Chili's, you got these waiters, they mix it up, French fries and onion rings left and right. They don't know what they're bringing out. We need the best quality waiters here, and we need to hire them on foreign visas.
I went to a Chili's. I ordered onion rings. They brought me jalapeno peppers. What is that?
I said I can't have that. I get indigestion.
We can't have that. Not in America. Not in this country.
We have sensitive stomachs here. Yeah. No. I mean, so now he's saying basically, what we need. H-1B visas to employ people at basically all levels of every sector, which is basically the status quo that people freaked out about. And then Elon did this whole thing. Oh, no. Look, I agree. The H-1B system is broken. Broken meaning too many waiters and maitre d's are coming in unnecessarily. Well, apparently not. Not. And the deportations are starting. You're already seeing videos of, people getting their doors kicked in. Now they're claiming that these people are all criminals. Obviously, we just did a segment on the Lake and Riley Act. Now you can be detained and deported if you're accused of a crime rather than being convicted. So we will wait and see who these people are who are being dragged out literally as we speak. But this is why I told you they are going to have to make immigration a crime and safety issue, because they cannot afford to really make it an economic issue because of shit like this, because they need the waiters and the maitre d's and the wine experts. They want to bring in as much foreign labor as possible to keep wages as low as possible. That is what they want to do. And so they're going to have to turn immigration into a public safety issue, which they are right now as we speak, and they've been doing for the last few months after they won the election.
Yeah. When people tell you who they are, believe them.
Yeah.
Do you think a guy whose mind, when talking about HB1 visas, would go to the need for high quality waiters and sommeliers gives a shit about the working class? Really? Do you think that man cares about you? He's defending these visas based on the need for high-end maitre d's.
Yeah.
He's not, you have no common interests with Donald Trump, with Elon Musk, with Jeff Bezos, with Mark Zuckerberg. You don't have common interests with these people. They are your enemies. They are your mortal enemies, and they are manipulating your frustration, your feelings of helplessness to make you feel empowered by people no longer getting to tend to their toddlers and having to take the bus and suffer like you feel you're suffering, and you may very well be suffering. I'm not minimizing that. That's not going to do one thing to alleviate your suffering. We're going to cover the DEI and the two sexes. He said genders, but he meant sexes, order. We're going to talk about that. And hey, man, I'm sympathetic to why those things are being rolled back. I think it's going too far, but the overall idea, I feel the liberals brought it on themselves. They created this situation, but it's not actually going to do anything for you. Like you might have less like triggering stuff on your social media feed about pronouns and stuff. It's not going to put $1 in your pocket. If you think it is, you're in for a rude awakening.
100%. 100%. All right. Well, folks, because Rumble Studio is not working today, we're actually able to display these super chats today. The problem is the people working from home can get time to think for themselves and learn things and get ideas. No, that's true. They don't want you to have work-life balance.
Yeah,
they don't want
exactly.
You
they don't want people happy.
Be happy. Right. They want you stressed and pressed for time. Yep. Exactly right. And poor, which you will be poorer if you have to drive into the. I mean, it's so self-explanatory. I mean, I don't even know what it costs now. I have no idea what it costs now. I imagine it's through the roof now. But when I was like in my early 20s, a monthly pass for the Metro North to ride in and out of the city, as many times as you wanted, which was what the workers had, was something crazy, like $600, like $7,000 a year you're spending on the fucking train to get to and from work that pays what, $75,000? Like, it's insane.
Right.
You could just have that money in your pocket. They don't want you to have that extra money. They want you to give that up.
They do not want people to have time and space, because with that, they might start to think. And if they start to think, they might start to organize. And if they start to organize, these guys are in trouble.
That's right. Danish delegation here just paid my second yearly sub to your Substack. Oh, thank you very much. You guys can have Greenland if you leave Europe. Bricks, this is the way. All right. Well, I'll tell you what. You get 100 of your fellow Greenlanders, or I'm sorry, get 100 of your fellow Danes to sign up to our Substack, and we'll count that towards the price of Greenland. How's that? We'll do that for God and country. Let's see. Thank you for your support, though. Really appreciate that. Hillary Hinton. When I got in my car today at 6 a.m., it was 1 degree Fahrenheit. I was afraid that my blood was going to freeze in my veins, but then I remembered that my blood is 20% gin. There you go. Good on you, Hillary Hinton. Yeah, no, up here it was sub-zero yesterday. Like sub-zero. It was like -8 in the morning. It was really,
-8,
really cold.
like not with the wind chill?
Not with the wind chill, no, before the wind chill.
Mm-hmm. Oh, wow. Yeah, it was really brutal. 15 degrees here yesterday.
Barron to Biden. You know all those kids that you thought were playing with your hairy legs in the pool that one time? That was me. Thank you very much. Appreciate that. Eric Rousseau, the virtue signaling DEI pastor, had not a single word about the ongoing genocide in Palestinian lives. Thank you. We will get to the pastor, the bishop. I think she was a bishop, right? Is a bishop and a pastor the same thing? Is that a thing where all bishops are pastors, but not all pastors are bishops? How does that work?
I don't know. We're calling that segment "Beating the Bishop."
Yeah, right.
That's exactly how we're titling it when we clip it.
All right. Why don't we go into some more executive orders?
All right. We're doing DEI.
Yeah.
Okay, so with both DEI and with the gender thing, it's useful, I think, to take a look at how we got here. So here's a grifter extraordinaire, Ibram X. Kendi, whose views on anti-racism did as much to fuel this backlash as anything else. I would say probably the most famous quote encapsulating his view: the only remedy to racist discrimination is anti-racist discrimination. The only remedy to past discrimination is present discrimination. The only remedy to present discrimination is future discrimination. I can't imagine a philosophy more designed to generate the kind of backlash that it has indeed finally led to. I would also like to point out how his department at Harvard had 40 some odd $1 million unaccounted for. Haven't heard much about that lately because it's too embarrassing for them to realize they fell victim to a con man. Or Robin DiAngelo, who in her wisdom as a wealthy white woman decided it was her place to explain to people what the nature of racism is. Matt Walsh recently, fittingly, as a kind of capstone to the end of the era in which someone like her could be taken seriously, trolled her pretty good with his recent film, Am I a Racist? And let's remember this. This was at the peak, really peak woke, peak DEI, 2020. The Smithsonian, no less, actually thought this was something that should be put on display. The idea that white culture is defined by individualism, nuclear families, being on time. Apparently, they consulted with David Duke to come up with this list of what traits Black people don't have or non-white people don't have.
Yeah, like I never associated any of those things with white culture.
Yeah, no. I mean,
like, who was doing that? That seems like a straw man to me.
Well, that's what's amazing about this, because they went so far in their anti-racism that in so many areas that came all the way back around to where you could have shown blind quotes who said it, the KKK or Ibram X. Kendi, and you would have had a very hard time figuring out which was which, because these are some of the racist stereotypes that the liberal project had been trying to dismantle for decades. The idea that Black people
whoever said that
are not inclined to nuclear
families. Whoever said that the nuclear family was white in nature. I mean, in my personal experience, the most family-oriented people I know in my life are mostly Latinos and Arabs. Now, I'm not saying it has to be that way, but I'm saying, like, I never saw, like, whoever said, well, yeah, no, nuclear family, it's a white thing.
Given that this was on display in the African American Museum, the stereotype that Blacks can't have families, they don't have a proper family life.
Well, it's hard to have families when Joe Biden and Bill Clinton are putting your father in jail.
Well, absolutely. So all this to say that, hey, these liberals, and we have said this many times since the election, one of the great things about the collapse of this class is once we get them out of the way, we can actually make a left argument on these issues, because this, to my mind, to our mind, I think I can say, was never the left argument. This was a liberal class argument that is really designed to create class division. That is why it is so clearly not suited to the task it claims to be aiming at, which is to ameliorate and eliminate racism. It's very obvious to anybody with any kind of common sense that this was going to get us exactly where we are now. So where are we now? With the CIA putting out videos explaining its recruitment efforts in the most cringe language you can imagine. So we're going to take a quick look at this. This is very much in the spirit of the military recruiting ad with the two moms you might have seen.
I am intersectional, but my existence is not. When I was 17, I quoted Zora Neale Hurston's How It Feels to Be Colored Me in my college application essay. The line that spoke to me stated simply, I am not tragically colored. There is no sorrow dammed up in my soul nor lurking behind my eyes. I do not mind at all. At 17, I had no idea what life would bring, but Sora's sentiment articulated so beautifully how I felt as a daughter of immigrants then and now. Nothing about me was or is tragic. I am perfectly made. I can wax eloquent on complex legal issues in English while also belting Guayaquil de mis amores in Spanish. I can change a diaper with one hand and console a crying toddler with the other. I am a woman of color. I am a mom. I am a cisgender millennial who's been diagnosed with generalized anxiety disorder.
That kills me, man. Like, it just gets more and more ridiculous as she goes. So Glenn tweeted this out.
Now, which brown country's government are we overthrowing today?
Yeah, exactly. Of all things,
right,
the woke CIA. The woke CIA.
Yeah.
Regardless of one's views of Trump's ban on DEI inside executive branch agencies, one tragic side effect is that it will deprive us of genuinely hilarious material where CIA, FBI, and the like appeal to their liberal base with videos like these. I mean, come on. If ever a political faction asked to be thrown out of power, it was this one. So Trump rolls back DEI efforts in government. President Donald Trump ramped up his efforts to crack down on diversity, equity, and inclusion programs in the federal government on Tuesday, ordering officials overseeing them to be placed on leave before their offices are shut down at the end of the month. A memo from the Office of Personnel Management ordered DEI staff to be placed on administrative leave by 5 p.m. Wednesday, and for plans to be drafted regarding staff reductions by the end of the day on January 31st. The push comes just hours after Trump signed a sweeping executive order Tuesday, ending DEI programs in the federal workforce and in federal contracting and spending. Both moves have since come under fire by civil rights groups and lawmakers, but were expected after Trump promised to make good on eradicating the efforts he has blasted as illegal and unfair. In addition to placing employees on paid leave, Tuesday's memo directs federal agencies to, quote, take down all outward-facing media, websites, social media accounts, etc., unquote, of DEI offices, cancel training related to DEI, and cancel contracts with DEI-related contractors by the same time on Wednesday. Now, I didn't want to make this a one-hour segment, but I'm just going to interject here. There are multiple studies showing that those programs, those trainings, those lectures actually created more racial tension in the places where they were enacted. There was absolutely no evidence whatsoever that they were in any way productive or effective for their stated goals. The agency,
no, they do that. It's a very much a corporate cover your ass thing. Well, right. if a racial incident happens at work between two workers, we get to say, well, hey, look, it's not on us. We brought in we
brought in a DEI consultant,
paid them $30,000 to do a lecture, so we did our part to stop that. That's all it is. It's just covering your ass.
Yep. These people would get paid $2,000 an hour, $2,500. Ibram X. Kennedy would get $20,000 to give a 20-minute speech.
Yeah.
This was quite a grift for these people. The agencies must give the OPM a list of all DEI offices, employees, and DEI-related contracts by noon Thursday. The agencies must also submit a written plan for executing a reduction in force action regarding the employees who work in a DEI office by 5 p.m. January 31st. If any federal employees suspect a DEI-related program has been renamed to hide its purpose, they have to report it within 10 days or face adverse consequences. The order said that the DEI-related policies, quote, undermine our national unity as they deny, discredit, and undermine the traditional American values of hard work, excellence, and individual achievement in favor of an unlawful, corrosive, and pernicious identity-based spoils system. Trump's order on Tuesday directs all executive departments and agencies to, quote, terminate all discriminatory and illegal preferences, mandates, policies, programs, activities, guidance, regulations, enforcement actions, consent orders, and requirements, unquote. It extends to the private sector, ordering all agencies to enforce our long-standing civil rights laws and to combat illegal private sector DEI preferences, mandates, policies, programs. The federal government is charged with enforcing our civil rights laws. The purpose of this order is to ensure that it does so by ending illegal preferences and discrimination. So, I think carrying over from the Supreme Court decision about affirmative action practices at universities, they're talking about going beyond the federal government and going after private corporations that employ these kinds of ideas. Now, a lot of these private companies have been backing off of these things as they've been seeing the cultural shift, as you've seen some effective boycotts of companies with DEI programs. So a lot of them are happy to be relieved of the burden of this, really. I don't think they're going to have to twist too many arms to get them to get rid of this. I think it's giving them the excuse. It also orders all agencies to compile lists of public companies, universities, and large foundations for investigations and potential civil action over their DEI programs. The executive order specifically revokes the Equal Employment Opportunity Order of 1965, signed by President Lyndon Johnson. Johnson's order charged the labor secretary with ensuring federal contractors were not discriminating based on race, color, religion, and national origin. It was later amended in 1967 to include sex. The order also requires contractors to take affirmative action to ensure equal opportunity for the protected groups. Now, this has been getting maybe the most backlash of any of this. And I must say, we on the show and many all across the commentariat have been saying for many years, if you allowed these grifters like Robin DiAngelo and Ibram X. Kendi, among many others, to define this conversation, you're going to generate a backlash that's not only going to wipe out the DEI industrial complex, it's going to actually undermine a lot of the liberal project of addressing discrimination in a way that's not batshit insane. And here we are. Now we're going all the way back to Lyndon Johnson in 1965. Now, I don't think most people who would consider themselves on the left disagree with the idea of making sure that federal contractors don't discriminate based on race, sex, national origin, and so on. This is what you empowered. These are the people that you elevated by entertaining these grifters. Do you want to say anything before we go on?
No, go ahead.
It was signed more than 2 years after Martin Luther King Jr. delivered his I Have a Dream speech and after Johnson signed the Civil Rights Act of 1964 and the Voting Rights Act. Trump's order and memo were met with mixed reactions. Several Republican lawmakers and right-wing influencers welcomed the move, with Senator Mike Lee of Utah thanking Trump in a social media post. But many civil rights activists and Democratic lawmakers expressed dismay over the move. The Congressional Black Caucus, one of the largest in Congress representing African-American lawmakers, and the insurance companies quite well, they do a good job for those guys, blasted Trump's move in a statement. Quote, "Since the Supreme Court's 2023 decision to end affirmative action admissions in college," caucus chairwoman Yvette Clarke said, "MAGA Republicans have set their sights on cutting off access to economic opportunity for Black and minority communities in the federal government, on college campuses, and in corporate America. This executive order is nothing short of an attempt to take our country backward and does nothing to help our communities grow economically or address the cost of living for hardworking American families," the New York Democrat said. Well, she's right about the last part. Civil rights attorney Ben Crump said in a social media post that the rollback undoes decades of progress toward workplace equality. We must continue fighting for a nation that values diversity and equity for all. So look, for the left, the first thing we got to do is shut all these people the fuck up. That's how we got here. They still want to talk. They still want to talk the language kabuki, the diversity and equity, even after all of this. These people have got to go. So
well,
now
if I could say something now, because I wanted to wait until the end of that article.
Yes, please. Yeah.
So if you look at how they frame this and how they talk about this as a, pursuit of equity that has now been rolled back, right? This is why I say at the end of the day, it all comes down to an unwillingness to confront capitalism and an insistence that capitalism and equity are compatible. They are not. They are not. And what happened to the left liberal project, if you will, is they ran up against the wall of capitalism, right? That the diversity project hit a wall of capitalism, and they were unable and unwilling to try and jump over that wall or knock down that wall. So what did they have to do? They had to escalate their woke rhetoric to lengths that became so absurd because they had nowhere else to carry the momentum of this project of creating a more equitable society. And when you start screaming and preaching diversity, 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 but capitalism remains in place such that all the diversification of the ruling class that you want to bring into being is not going to empower working class people, because ruling class people are at odds in their interests with working class people. So at that point, there's going to be a backlash against diversity, because people are going to see diversity, even if they don't articulate it this way. They understand somewhere intuitively that DEI is ultimately a tool of capitalism. It is a tool of capitalism. And if you're not willing to dismantle capitalism at a certain point, then the only place to go is backwards. The only place to go is backwards because the Democrats weren't willing to move forward. Most people understand that a CIA officer bragging about her whatever neurodivergence and cisgender this whatever is not doing anything to empower majorities of people of all colors, all religions, all sexualities, everything. They're going to understand this is just a way to package a brutal economic system with a ribbon and a bow to make us think it's nice. That is why the CIA put that video out, because they want to think, well, the CIA values diversity, so they must be nice, they must be great, they must be good, they must mean us well. They don't mean you well. Corporations do not mean you well. Nobody who puts in place one of these DEI programs means people well. It is all an attempt to smooth over the brutalities of capitalism, number one, and two, divide workers. So very, very simply, what you could take away from all this, anything that divides labor serves capital, period. Anything that divides labor serves 6 words. That's all you need to know about this.
Right.
Something that divides workers serves management, period.
Right. And that has always been the purpose of this. Michael Parenti has done a lot of great writing, given a lot of speeches and interviews about this. Jimmy had him on recently talking about what the purpose of this is. How do you function as a left without a class analysis, without an economic theory? Well, you have to get into increasingly bizarre and arcane identitarian agendas.
Right.
Where else are you going to go? What are you going to run on? If you're a left that doesn't want to attack Wall Street, what do you run on? You have to create increasingly bizarre, illusory projects of progress. It's supposed to be progressive, but you're not going to get into economics. Well, then progress has to become drag brunch for toddlers. What else are you going to do? And in order to create that Monarchian conflict with the other side, you have to pick increasingly divisive ideas like like telling children that they're responsible for systemic racism. You have to get into increasingly divisive areas to fundraise off of, to create the illusion that you have a meaningful political project when you don't. You really don't.
Right. Exactly.
So now an angle of this, I think a lot of the coverage is missing, is Trump basically to a T seems to be carrying out the ideas of Christopher Rufo. Christopher Rufo was really elevated by Ron DeSantis. He put him in charge of reforming the new college in Florida, basically as a laboratory of what an anti-woke university would look like. So he's kind of become a leading conservative intellectual. And it literally looks like Trump's people looked at his work as a guideline for this. So Rufo celebrated quite loudly about him signing the order repealing Lyndon Johnson's executive order. And here he says, he takes some credit. 1 year ago, I laid out a 3-part agenda for the bringing colorblind equality to the government. Trump has already issued orders on 2 of the points. Next up, destroy the false and malicious disparate impact standard government-wide. So yes, everything that Trump has done is in this article. So it's worth looking at what he's talking about because it probably will happen if history is any guide.
So basically, this was the real Project 2025.
This was the real project. See, nobody was looking at nobody was looking in the right place. So just to give you an idea philosophically at how Rufo frames it here, he makes a case setting up the article that conservatives have it wrong and the kind of white nationalists have it wrong. Some conservatives seem to have forgotten that the Civil Rights Act was a response to state-sanctioned racial injustice in the United States, and that at its best, the civil rights movement appealed to the ideals of the Declaration of Independence and the language of the 14th Amendment. The libertarian proposal for abolishing the Civil Rights Act, like most libertarian proposals, is unfeasible. The white identity proposal, which I have previously criticized, is a recipe for permanent racial division more akin to prison gang politics than Republican virtue. Happily, another avenue is open to us: reform. The ideological capture of the Civil Rights Act is neither fixed nor inevitable. Rather than argue for its abolition, Americans concerned about the excesses of the DEI bureaucracy should appeal to higher principles and demand that our civil rights law conform to the standard of colorblind equality. So philosophically, that's how he's presenting it. Frankly, I don't disagree with anything that he's saying there. I think it's always in a pluralistic society, the idea of carve-outs and quotas was always going to collapse under the weight of its own contradictions. He does acknowledge that there's a purpose to the Civil Rights Act, and he doesn't advocate for its appeal. So I point this out because I suspect that as the liberals start to gather themselves and launch some kind of an assault on these policies, you're going to hear a lot more about Christopher Rufo. This is an obscure thing right now, but I suspect there are going to be a lot of attacks on him. And I don't think the right attack is that he's a wild-eyed white supremacist maniac. Reformers. So this is the third part that I think you should expect to see pretty soon, because this is the only part of that article that hasn't been executed already. Reformers must eliminate the disparate impact provisions in the Civil Rights Act of 1991 and overturn Griggs versus Duke Power Company, both of which have entrenched the doctrine that disparate group outcomes are de facto evidence of racial discrimination. This is a preposterous standard. A system of equal rights necessarily means unequal outcomes, as different groups have different preferences, talents, and capacities. Under a just system, the criterion for assessing biased treatment would not be disparate outcomes, but specific concrete discrimination driven by animus. Much as libel law requires actual malice, anti-discrimination law should require proof that an individual or institution sought to discriminate. The change in standard would have an immediate effect, reducing the number of frivolous lawsuits and changing the incentives that have driven institutions toward racialist ideology as a defensive strategy. Now, the classic example a lot of people will point out to make an argument against the standard of disparate outcomes is basketball? Is it evidence that white people are being discriminated against, that they usually are not professional basketball players? I agree that evidence of disparate outcomes in and of itself should not be considered de facto evidence of discrimination. I think often it is a leading indicator of it, and if you see it, it merits further investigation. I'm not sure if that's the standard that's really applied in courtrooms. He seems to be saying that it is. Do you want to say anything before I go on?
Well, I mean, sports is different because you're talking about physical traits, right? I mean, black people tend to be taller, so you know, right there, that gives you a huge advantage in basketball, right? I think if you're talking about disparate outcomes in other places,
Nursing,
I think you can look at that.
Nursing, you know, I mean, different groups have different interests sometimes because of culture. This has become very controversial of late, but I think about to become less so. Yeah, the sexes are not the same. You know, there are certain types of career paths that women
Sure,
are
but I'm
more
just talking
attracted to, and men
broad-based,
are more well.
you
But
know.
that would be de facto evidence of discrimination according to these ideas, and it's not just in sports. So the basic premise,
Not just in sports, but I'm talking about just broadly speaking, people who work an office gig, whatever.
Sure. The basic premise that disparate outcomes is not de facto on the face of it,
Yeah, I agree it's not
automatic
de facto, right.
evidence.
Yeah.
Well, that's what he argues here.
Right.
That you need evidence that there's actually discrimination at play. So somebody who is very excited about Rufo's triumph, Michael Schellenberger. Congratulations, Chris, you made it happen. If one had to pinpoint the exact moment you killed DEI, it might have been May 26, 2021. I remember this story. Lockheed Martin, the nation's largest defense contractor, sent key executives to a 3-day white male re-education camp in order to deconstruct their white male culture and atone for their white male privilege. And again, you look at this, it's all a kabuki of progress. It's all a substitute for progress instead of the real thing. What could more emblemize the liberal project than one of the world's most evil defense contractors sending their white executives away to learn about DEI? This too, you know, was this happening everywhere? Seattle Public Schools tells teachers that the education system is guilty of spirit murder against black children, and that white teachers must bankrupt their privilege in acknowledgement of their thieved inheritance. Now, a lot of people will point out when you bring up examples like this, well, those are edge cases, those are fringe cases, and yeah, maybe. Did you see AOC and Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer and all these leaders of the party, Barack Obama, speaking out against things like that? Or were they signaling an affinity for ideas like that made it seem, even if they personally might not have thought it's a good idea to tell children that they're responsible for spirit murder, they certainly went out of their way to link themselves to those things in the public mind. Very much as a lot of people said about Kamala. Well, she didn't run on trans stuff. Well, what? She didn't signal a connection to these movements. So I think to say, well, these are very extreme cases, why should the Democrats be held responsible for it? That's pretty disingenuous. But I want to point out, this is certainly not what I ever wanted. I have been advocating, among many other people, that the left needs to formulate a response to the realities of racism and systemic injustice that gets away from these very divisive ideas, this very divisive language. Because as much as I feel what Christopher Rufo said there was reasonable, Christopher Rufo also retweeted this. America is civilizationally undefeatable because there is nothing everyone has easy mental access to coming even close on an aesthetic level to the grit and glory of the Old West's cowboys and gunslingers, who themselves derive from its early settler frontiersmen and patriots. Okay. So these are the people that you put in charge. You were not able to formulate a left answer to these questions that was not repulsive, or those of us who I would consider not liberals but left, many of us were cowards. We're not willing to challenge these people for fear of getting canceled or ostracized or called an ist or a phobe. You didn't want to have this fight. Here you go. Here you go. Now these people are going to dictate the cultural conversation. The wages of woke is not only broke, it's absolute intellectual bankruptcy and the complete triumph of people who are going to go all the way in the other direction. Now, once again, the whole frontier myth is restored. It's not going to be a story of genocide and slavery. Now it's once again the rugged individualist. Is there room for recognizing the, true grit kind of archetype alongside the rest of that? I think so, but they're not going to do that. They're going to try to go all the way back to John Wayne, true grit stuff, and that's what you empowered.
Yeah, well, I mean, Rufo was the guy who, what did he say? He's found evidence of the Haitians cooking the cats when he.
What did Rufo say?
Yeah, Rufo did that. He put a picture of a barbecue in a backyard, which turned out to not be in Springfield, Ohio. Turned out to be
that was him. I know exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah, that was him.
Right. So these are the people you elevated, man. These are the people you, probably not many in our audience, the people who thought like that early on, because I would dare say we were probably the only real left channel that was taking this line when it was at its height, when it was really dangerous. I was always afraid I was going to get us kicked off YouTube. I'd have to answer to Keaton about it. We were speaking out about this stuff, man. But most of the channels did not want to touch that shit, especially at that moment when it counted the most. And this is exactly why I always spoke about it, man, because I knew this was going to happen. And this is not what I ever wanted.
All right. Let's go to some more super chats and Rumble rants here. Where do we got it here? I'm getting used to learning the old way of doing things because we're on the old way of doing things today. Trump is a developer, says Katie, wants to end the deficit and is using this back to the office as an excuse to sell off government property like Millet. Interesting theory. I know commercial real estate had plummeted. Kathy Hochul did this a while ago in New York, by making people come back to work, making government workers come back to the office because of her real estate lobby donors. So there could be a certain element to that. In terms of like deficit reduction, that I'm not sure. Like a Doge plan, could be. YepX, thanks for the $5. I find a majority of people have no firm understanding of socialism and communism. Capitalism is the problem. I agree with you. John Locke, I've eaten all over the world at many of the world's finest places, and all the smartest people know that the best sommeliers come from Somalia. It's in the name, people. Thank you, John Locke. Appreciate that very much. Do you have to be Cuban to get Havana syndrome? Thank you, Virtuoso. Appreciate that. That's right. Adil Syed, I have been on H-1B visa for the last 11 years with an infinitely long green card wait. These oligarchs will support H-1B, but will never support green card since that will make them lose their bonded labor. Well, yes, they want as many workers as possible, no matter what the specifics of their situation, in as precarious a spot as possible, right? And that applies pretty much across the board. All right, what we got here? We got Nocturnal Human. Eggman is boiled. The blackmail they have on him must be bad. Thank you, Nocturnal Human. Link to Paul Kingsworth's speech. Thank you, Kay Cotwas. Appreciate that. Let's see here. Oh, George. Hey, oh, George. Haven't seen you in a while, oh, George. Can a sexual deviant catch a break? I mean, I finally find someone I can identify with to some degree, and now this. I already ordered the new Brando dildo. The old stands for OVO. Boom. Thank you very much. Appreciate that.
We're gonna have fun with Mr. Brand later.
K. Cut was another great dialogue on the topic of Christian civilization that I think you'll find really fascinating. Thank you for that. Pretty much. Thank you for that very much. Excuse me, Eric Rousseau. Send Jimmy Dore to Cornwall West Grift Clutch. Yeah, where is that? Is that in New York or is that in
It's in
DC?
Midtown, he said.
Oh, wow.
It's in Midtown, so yeah, it's here.
I would pay $999 to watch Cornell pantomime 90 minutes in Marcus Garvey Park. There you go. Thank you, Biden.
You know, I saw that for free.
Yes. Yep.
I saw it for free.
Cool Blue says a Rumble chat, unlike a super chat, deals in whole dollars, not a 99 nonsense. There you go. I like that. Thank you, Cool Blue. Appreciate that. All righty. Let's move on. We got the next executive order.
Okay. Well,
just pause that video at the monument.
I know. Yeah. So
I forgot until I saw it.
So this tells you something that we can't even show the whole video of the party they had on the White House lawn. So very much in the same spirit, I'd like to take a look at how we got here. How did we get to a place where Donald Trump is to enthusiastic applause declaring two genders? Well, things like this might have had something to do with it.
Welcome to the White House.
Thank you. Happy Pride Month. Happy Pride Year. Happy Pride Life.
Yeah!
Transgender children.
You are beautiful.
You are heard.
You belong.
You are understood.
You are loved.
And you belong. Some of the bravest and most inspiring people I've ever known.
You're welcome.
Good folks.
Can we take a little video? Hi, Mr. President. It is an honor. Trans rights are human rights. Oh, it's a video. Oh, it's a video.
All right, so that transgender person later in the video dances topless on the White House lawn. And while, yes, later on they did ban that person from returning to the White House, it doesn't really take away the fact that, as we were discussing in the previous segment, this liberal faction, for lack of a meaningful politics or a meaningful class analysis, had nothing to do but pump up these kinds of issues. You're in a country where the middle class is crumbling. People are falling further and further behind. You got poisoned water in places like Flint. And he's standing up on stage talking about trans kids, which in and of itself is a very controversial concept, and stating it as a fact, and describing trans people as the bravest people he knows. And how do you think that's going to play? Now, maybe you like that. Maybe you agree with that. Okay, that's your business, but I'm telling you, that is a big part of how we got to this. Do you want to say anything, Keaton?
Yeah, I would just say, like we did in the DEI segment, it is easier, and as we got into with the immigration bit last show, it's a lot easier to package social progress as such when it comes part and parcel with economic progress and economic empowerment of working people. In other words, if we were to stop sanctioning countries south of the border, and we had good wages here and universal health care here, then the immigration problem would be mostly solved, because if we leave countries south of the border alone, you wouldn't have much flow of migrants up in the first place. And when some of them got here, as long as people felt secure in their economic position, there'd be a lot less resentment about they're going to come in here and get benefits that I don't get.
Hey, man,
all has to be like what you said. Like I personally don't have a problem with a Pride event at the White House. Pride months, Pride events have been going on for generations. So whatever.
That's more than a Pride event. That was an event where he's embracing a very divisive form of gender ideology that I think was inappropriate for the president of the United States to be endorsing. And I think most people would feel that way watching that. It wasn't just a gay pride event. It was more than that.
Even if it was a trans pride event, personally, I wouldn't care. I don't have an issue with it. But what I would say is, when you make a show of social progress and you have people, the majority of whom feel in a very precarious position, that is how you breed resentment. That is a stew for resentment. And that often manifests in dialing progress back, as we saw in the DEI segment. Now you have 60s era equal opportunity laws being rolled back. Right?
Right.
And now a lot of the Democrats are going to say, well, look what you did. Well, no, it's kind of look what you did.
Exactly.
Right?
Exactly.
It's kind of look what you did. Because you
that...
ran into a wall of economic equality and you were not willing to deal with that. And that puts people in a very difficult spot where, yes, when they see this show of diversity as moral virtue, they think to themselves, well, this is bullshit. It's they're one of the Trump flags that you'll see, and so like MAGA, fuck Biden. One of the early Trump flags in Trump t-shirts was no more bullshit. No more bullshit. That's what that refers to, this kind of stuff. You're trying to bullshit us into thinking that a more diverse and racially and sexually equitable society leads to our empowerment. We know that's bullshit. We know that because we've gotten there more or less, and we are still deep in debt. We're still sick. We can't go to the doctor. We're still eating garbage because it's the only food we can pay for. That's where they get the idea that social progress is bullshit, because if it doesn't lead to the empowerment of the majority of people, working class people of all colors and everything, then eventually that's going to implode, because people are going to realize there's nothing in it for them.
Right. Right. Well, this always had an air of the aristocrats trying to tell the peasants how they're supposed to think and how they're supposed to behave. And it had, as you pointed out, absolutely no material component to it. I mean,
right, there's no material component.
This entire liberal project. So we get to this.
As of today, it will henceforth be the official policy of the United States government that there are only two genders, male and female.
So now, I don't know if he meant sex. I would agree with the sex part, gender. I think that's a philosophical matter.
I don't think he knows the difference, to be honest.
I don't think he knows. Yeah. So 5 takeaways on Trump's executive actions on gender. President Trump signed a sweeping executive order late Monday during his first hours in office, recognizing only two sexes and preventing government dollars from being spent on what his administration called gender ideology. The executive order is part of a broader campaign promise to roll back trans rights and diversity and inclusion initiatives instituted by the Biden administration that Republicans argued went too far. Here are 5 takeaways on Trump's action. Trump's executive order is sweeping and at times vague, posing some questions about how it will be implemented. The order, which pledges to restore biological truth to the federal government, defines male and female not by physical or chromosomal differences, but by reproductive function. Federal agencies should use the term sex instead of gender, according to the order, and remove statements, policies, and communications that promote gender ideology, which it defines in part as an ever-shifting concept of self-assessed gender identity. You know, the moon gender people are out now. Federal funds shall not be used to promote gender ideology, the order states. It directs the secretaries of state and Homeland Security to prevent trans people from self-selecting their gender on official government documents such as visas and passports, which the State Department first allowed in 2021. Trump's order does not explicitly address passports with an unspecified gender marker denoted by a single letter X, which the department began rolling out in 2022. If I had to bet, that was an oversight and they'll get rid of it. Monday's executive order also tasks the incoming Attorney General and Secretary of Homeland Security to bar transgender people from government-funded single-sex facilities that best align with their gender identity, including prisons, migrant housing, and domestic violence shelters. It directs the Bureau of Prisons to halt the use of federal dollars for gender-affirming care. The order blocks okay, so I'm just going to address this very quickly. Again, as with DEI, this was what I personally was always worried would eventually happen. Hey, there are unique dangers, obviously, for a trans woman to be put into a cell with men in a prison. Now, by insisting that women who have a right to single-sex spaces, particularly in environments like prisons, where by definition they have no choice about who they share a cell with, to impose that on them was grossly unfair and in many cases dangerous. You create a third housing facility for people in that category. That's the solution. By absolutely insisting that somebody who says they're a woman is a woman and have to be treated as such, well, now you got us here. Now you got us here where once again, those people are going to be the real victims of this religious fervor that many people brought to this subject. Now you've actually hurt the people that you claimed you were helping, because no, I don't think they should just be thrown into a cell with men. I think they should be in a separate population in a prison.
Well, yeah, trans woman in a cell with men. I mean, we don't have to tell you what the danger of that is. I don't know how much detail we can get into here in East Berlin about the danger of that, but it's pretty obvious.
Pretty obvious.
It's pretty
right.
obvious, right? And having a trans-only prison, I mean, look, if you did a trans-only
well, it doesn't have to be
prison-
the whole prison. Just you have to have a wing or certain cells where that's where people who identify that way go. Keeps them out of danger. And at the same time, it's not being imposed on women.
Well, it would also be, I think, great for the trans movement to have a trans-only prison, because then if you get convicted of a crime, how could you not trans? You got to trans if you're convicted of a crime, because then you can fuck in prison.
There you
go. That's the worst thing about prison, is you can't fuck in prison. But if you were trans and you were just in there with people who look like men and women and whatever your persuasion is, boom. At that point, really, what's the downside of prison? If you could have sex in prison and you just get free room, board, and pussy your whole life, I mean, what?
Well,
not everybody wants to go to India like you. You know, I'd be fine with that.
Well, Keaton, this is why you really need to come to Work or Strike Back to make these kinds of proposals.
Exactly. Yeah.
Shama needs you there in Seattle to put this kind of thing forward as part of the agenda.
Yeah. I think pussy in prison makes it a pretty good deal.
All right. All right. Well, spoken like a true married man.
Yeah.
The order blocks requirements at government facilities and workplaces that transgender people be referred to using pronouns that match their gender identity, which Trump and administration officials have argued violates the First Amendment's freedom of speech and religion. And again, we get to something where this was what was always going to happen if you allowed these maniacs to keep pushing in a deeply unpopular and divisive agenda. You were going to empower the other side to go all the way in the other direction. No, it is not a violation of the First Amendment to have certain rules in a workplace. It is a violation of the First Amendment to require it society-wide, to tell people in their personal lives they have to use pronouns. It is not a violation of the First Amendment within a workplace to say that you have to respect how the person identifies. But now here we are. Trump had pledged to recognize only two sexes, male and female, as president, and to prevent federal funds from being used to cover the costs of gender-affirming care for transgender inmates. On the campaign trail, Trump had also railed against the use of pronouns for individuals who are and who are not transgender. In an interview with Fox News' Laura Ingraham in July, Trump said, "I don't want pronouns," when asked for his own. "Also, I don't see why federal workers can't use the N-word. That's a violation of their freedom of speech. I used it once. Oh my God, they made such a big deal out of it." Monday's order does not explicitly address access to gender-affirming care, which Trump has said he plans to heavily restrict. In 2022, Trump said he would ban transition-related care for minors, which I agree with, obviously, and hand down harsh penalties to individuals and institutions that administer care to children and adolescents younger than 18. He has also threatened federal funding for hospitals that provide such care. For the broadness of that, I would need more details. Does that mean a teen experiencing gender dysphoria can't be treated as such with therapy? that's going too far, as these people tend to do. But the general principle that minors have been undiagnosed, and certainly that any kind of medication or surgery should be off the table, in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's reasonable to obviously say you shouldn't put a kid under a knife for surgery and stuff. But, you know, I've mentioned many times on the show, you know, my cousin is a trans influencer out in LA. And the first time I met her when she was a male, born a male, I was like 7 and she was like 4. Rough estimate. She was a little kid. I was, you know, like mid elementary school, whatever, first, second, third grade. And the first time I saw her, I said, "This is a girl. This doesn't make sense that this is a boy." Like she was a boy, she was a male, but I said, "This doesn't." She looks like a girl. She talks like a girl. She acts like a girl. She just had the essence of a girl. I'm like, "What? This is a boy?" Like I was legit, and I didn't know anything about any of this. So, and now she grew up, and now she is a girl. So. You know, you want to say there's no trans kids out there? I mean, I don't know. I mean, that's a coincidence that I was able to predict that 30 years out, not knowing anything about any of this. So I do think like treatment and therapy. I think it's absurd to say that unless you're 18, you can't present with gender dysphoria. Like that's absurd. Like medicine and science doesn't care what the political distinction between childhood and adulthood is. You could see symptoms emerge of that, you know, years before someone turns 18. In terms of putting someone under a knife and doing something irreversible, that's where I think it is obviously a legitimate concern. But in terms of like, if by care you mean therapy and things like that, then yeah, obviously I think that should be available to everybody.
Right, and that's why I say with this crew, you could see them taking it to the level of therapy. In terms of your cousin, also remember this was a different era. At that time, if a child, if a therapist claimed that a child was suffering from gender dysphoria, you would not have had reason to question it.
I understand that.
Now that it has become this insanely overdiagnosed phenomena applied to autistic children and very often gay and lesbian children, that it's a different time. Like you can't trust those diagnoses anymore. However, we essentially agree, like I would not want to see a world where children cannot be given therapy with a diagnosis of gender dysphoria. I think we need to get much more clear about what that means.
Well, also, you know, whether you can determine the legitimacy of a diagnosis or not, that, like, I don't think individual rights should be subject to the whims of cultural trends. Like, just because it might be
but they are in the way they're being overdiagnosed. They are being subject to the whims of cultural trends.
Well, but that's what I'm saying. Like, right now, they are. Right? Like right now they are. Like if you say, well, because we think this is a social contagion that's being overdiagnosed, that means we're going to ban these therapies. Well, you can't ban those therapies outright because in that case, you're going to hurt people who have legitimate cases who need treatment for
I
them.
agree. That's going too far.
Right.
So you have to figure out what are the standards? What are the real standards of care? And what's very difficult about this is the industry has been so ideologically captured that it's hard to find who the people would be who are going to establish those standards fairly without bias in one direction or the other, without either overcorrecting or trying to continue the regime we have now, which is clearly not working.
Right. I saw someone in the chat. So So someone in the chat said 7-year-old Keaton could diagnose gender dysphoria. BS. I didn't diagnose anything. I met my cousin when I was a kid, and I said, this doesn't seem like a boy. This does not seem like a male. This is a male, but I feel like I'm in the same room as a girl. Everything about her reads girl to me as a child. And so, as it turns out, that child would grow up and become a trans woman. So I'm saying, if I could sense that as a child, I didn't make a diagnosis. If I could sense that as a child, it must mean there's something there. Otherwise, that's just a pretty wild coincidence. It's pretty wild luck that I was able to sense that as a child, and then 30 years later, here we are.
Like I said, I mean, that was a different time in terms of there was not a problem of overdiagnosis. I would also say, hey, man, I've known a lot of gay kids who read like they were the opposite gender who grew up to be gay and lesbian. So there's that too. And that's part of, I think, what's been most horrific about this current age very different time from when your cousin was diagnosed. I think a lot of gays and lesbians got misdiagnosed and are going to suffer for that for the rest of their lives.
That's totally possible. But like I said, I'm a theater kid too. I've been around a lot of gay kids too. It wasn't like this. It was different. That's all I can say. You're saying my personal experience. Like, it was different.
I buy that. I mean, I am not one of those who says it doesn't exist. What I would say is it's extremely rare, much more rare than it's being diagnosed.
Yes, I would agree with that. It's obviously being overdiagnosed. Now, I don't think there's much doubt about that. But I was just saying, like, if you're going to create policy and ban certain treatments and act as if it's not real, well, there's going to be collateral damage to that.
Sure, I agree. Yeah. All right, so the order does not touch on transgender athletes in women's sports. That's a little surprising. I assume they're going to roll out something else for that, which Trump has long opposed and attempted to ban during his first term. During a town hall event in October, Trump said he would just ban trans athletes from girls and women's sports as president. Monday's executive order and other promised actions targeting transgender Americans will almost certainly face legal challenges in the months and years ahead. The American Civil Liberties Union, which frequently challenges anti-LGBTQ laws in court, had already pledged to sue the Trump administration wherever we can. In a statement late Monday, Lambda Legal, an LGBTQ civil rights organization, said it is similarly prepared to challenge Trump's orders. Executive orders relating to transgender rights issued during Trump's first term tended to use the word transgender. A 2017 order barring trans people from serving openly in the military, for example, uses the term on 7 separate occasions. Monday's order, despite its explicit and direct impact on transgender and gender nonconforming Americans, does not. It claims the Biden administration, by embracing gender identity as a fundamental and protected characteristic, permitted, quote, the false claim that males can identify as and thus become women and vice versa. And that's a good example of what we're talking about in terms of backlash. This whole so-called movement had the opposite effect. Even Trump moved to the right between his first term and his second term. J.K. Rowling here made a very good point. A noisy part of the left still refuses to step outside their sex is a social construct bubble and acknowledge that their embrace of gender identity ideology has been a calamity. They were warned the right was capitalizing on their betrayal of women and girls. They didn't listen. And this is, she's responding to an article here that was in the Free Press where the author here writes, it's a huge failure of the left progressives that the material reality of sex had to be confirmed by Trump. So now these are the kinds of wackos that you've mainstreamed now. Although Valentina Gomez, she's so crazy, even Trump won't invite her to the inauguration. Donald Trump is officially our president, and I still have all my rights. Jesus is king. Abortion is murder. There's only 2 sexes. Mass deportations. Public executions for rapists and murderers. All this gay shit ends today. Nice.
I call her KKKOC. I'm really disappointed that has not caught.
And here
I don't know why I can't get that to stick. Why? That's good.
It is good. It is good because I mean she has not gotten high profile enough, but she will.
I guess so. Yeah, she's not like a household
suspect she
name.
will. Trump official policy is officially 2 genders, male and female. Bye bye, Richard Levine. There's this is what you're gonna have now. This is the direction that the culture has gone in. I personally, and I'm sure we're together on this, I never wanted to see people mocked this way. I never wanted to see people attacked this way, but you let an ideological fervor pushing completely divisive, unpopular, irrational, and anti-scientific agendas on the American public. Well, they turned around and voted for this. Now, Lisa Sellen Davis, we actually had her on the show a while ago to talk about these issues. we didn't get into Democrat stuff, but I got the sense she's a lib. There are a lot of libs like her who never bought into this stuff, but they were too afraid to talk about it. I had a friend who she was in like a mom's group in Long Island, and she shared our Buck Angel interview video, and she got kicked out of the group. And she was a Dem in good standing, so you couldn't say anything even if you didn't agree with it. So she has more, I think, TDS certainly than we do. I think she probably has some Trump derangement syndrome, but she kind of points the way forward here. To concur with the convicted felon pussy grabber who supported the end of Roe and disappeared the site reproductiverights.gov within moments of taking office, to believe that he actually cares about women is a hard no for some liberals who have been making these same arguments for years. So my advice to those people is this: if it feels weird to have your own ideas falling from Trump's mouth, don't shut up, speak louder, speak more often. If you haven't spoken up yet, do so now. Show America that these ideas are standard liberal feminist fare. We know that sex is real, but we also accept an older meaning of gender, societal ideas and stereotypes of masculinity and femininity. We can embrace a sex-based reality and still leave room for masculine girls and feminine boys. Hear, hear. So here is a gay man making that point himself. Hang on. I'm into Brand-Shmuley here. There we go.
You're in there, yeah.
Waiting with this comment is that because I express myself a certain way, I must be confused about my gender. Feminine gay men still exist, masculine women, tomboys still exist. Just because I wear makeup or the clothing that I wear, or because my mannerisms might be a little bit more feminine, there's no confusion when it comes to my biology, baby. But I understand with the new gender identity crisis movement, if you express yourself a certain way, now you're expected to identify differently. What I find interesting, and let me get this gay real quick, people like you pride yourselves on trying to abolish gender stereotypes. To you guys, anybody can identify as whatever the hell they want at any point in time, right? They don't have to look a certain way, act a certain way, until it fits your narrative, and then you're quick to flip the script, and because you see that I have makeup on, you try to categorize me and label me as something other than just a man. Jumping to that conclusion based off of the same gender stereotypes that you guys are trying to do away with. So which one is it? Not that I care, just pointing out the hypocrisy. Though I express myself in a more feminine manner, at the end of the day, I'm still a man. You don't gotta think too deeply about it, I promise. Glossy lips, plucked eyebrows and all, and let me know if you need some help sometime, my love. I love you guys, and I will see you all in the next one.
Okay, and this is what has been so crazy and so offensive about this movement to me. In many ways, its basic premises are a throwback to 1955. That if you don't present, on the one hand, you're saying that gender presentation is a social construct. Well, okay, if that's your premise, then why does somebody who's not presenting in a traditional gender role the opposite sex? There's a core contradiction in the entire premise. So why can't you be like him? Why can't you be a feminine presenting man or a masculine presenting girl? This idea of performing surgeries on people to change their sex. I mean, it almost seemed like a dystopian science fiction premise about a world gone wrong circa 1958, where they would give everyone surgery if they presented as gay or lesbian. So look, overall, I feel like they're going to go too far, and then we're going to fight that. But the end of this overall had to come.
Yeah, I mean, you can be an effeminate man, or you can be a trans person. I mean,
you can be.
Like, you can be.
But there was an effort to push people in a certain direction and define them that way automatically, and that becomes particularly problematic with children.
Well, like how many?
What do you mean?
Like, I mean, like how many? Like why? Like, there's not a. There hasn't been a hollowing out of effeminate men. There are still a lot of effeminate men.
Donnie, you're out of your element.
Like, has there
Donnie,
been?
You're out of your element. Donnie,
like,
you're out of.
Like I don't understand. Like, so we're saying
yeah,
what,
no,
what,
no,
there's
not,
no more
not,
feminine
not,
men?
no. This, yes. How? I mean, what are you saying? Have you heard of Tavistock? I mean,
I'm
thousands,
just saying how many
thousands of children, thousands of
I'm
adolescents.
just saying, like, how broad based?
Thousands,
yeah.
thousands.
All right,
thousands
All
of people were submitted to this.
Okay. All right. So thousands
right.
of people were submitted. All right. In a world of 7 billion with thousands. Okay. All right.
Okay.
Like, that's
well,
that's what I'm asking.
Okay. So,
Yeah.
so what are you saying? So we should maintain this? Like,
No, I'm just
what are you getting at?
No, not at all. I don't see a broad movement saying you can't be an effeminate man anymore. That the trans ideology is an existential threat to effeminate men.
I think you should read some Judith Butler. And I think you should take a look at a lot of what the trans activists are saying. I think you should, I think maybe we should have, not to talk about Israel, maybe have Buck come back on to talk about his death threats for speaking out that way. Yeah, maybe we should have Jesse Signal on, who went on Blue Sky and had his life threatened multiple times for speaking out against the idea.
I'm not saying none of that happens.
People should be transed for not presenting
that's
in
terrible.
a traditional way.
Yeah, that's terrible. That's terrible. I just don't think that poses an existential threat to effeminate men worldwide. Like, I still think you could be both. Like, the world still accommodates both. That's what I would say. On a whole, yes. Obviously, I'm not for death threats. Obviously, I'm not for misdiagnosing people for purposes of experimentation. I just think
that's really what we're talking about.
Right, but I'm just saying, how broad based is that? Like, I think the idea that we can't have a feminine. Oh, you can't be an effeminate man anymore without being swept into this cult of gender ideology. Like, I don't think the stakes are that high. I don't see evidence for like that being something that happens very often. Maybe more often than you think it should. That's fair. That's totally fair. That's what I would say.
I would say the thousands of children who got swept into Tavistock might feel differently.
All right. Well, that's what I would say. I mean, I think it is not broad-based an existential threat to men who are like, I think you could still be an effeminate man without thinking that you're going to get sucked into this, without the assumption that you're going to get sucked into this.
Yeah. I mean, there are quite a lot of gays and lesbians who felt differently, who felt completely abandoned by groups like GLAAD that became completely focused on transgender issues and felt that they were being attacked for insisting that they have a right, for example, in the case of lesbians, to exclusively want to sleep with women, not people who identify as women, but with women.
Yeah, I'm not for any of that. Not for any of that. All right, very good. Eric Maines, a return to office cost and morons. Fed pay is based on locality. Number one, it can add 30% pay moving to city. Add transit parking subsidy, office space costs, including accommodation money for disabled workers. Thank you for that, Eric Maines. Appreciate that. Got to button your shirt or you get demonetized. You didn't have to threaten me with that. I realized when I moved and my microphone was like, yeah, it's probably a little low placement on that second button. Can't wait till next month in Seattle. Thank you, SASR 78. That's right. That's coming up very soon. It's actually a month from yesterday, February 22nd, first day of the Worker Strike Back Conference. Love y'all. Can't wait to meet Shama and Rush in Washington. Thank you very much. Appreciate that. Okay. No one gets to hear my inappropriate comments at the water cooler with remote work. Thank you. Yes, that is one drawback, because you don't get that office space kind of culture. The peasant mind is jealousy and hatred against other persons. It is desire to hurt, perhaps even destroy other persons. Absolutely. Trump is a communist, says Nocturnal Human. Appreciate that very much. All right, let's keep going on with the show today. All right, we're going to get to Whitney Webb in the segment following this one, but this is kind of a concise packaging of some of the culture wars, because it was touched upon when a certain bishop took the stage at the inaugural ceremony. So Johnny MAGA says this woman should never step foot in the National Cathedral again in any capacity. The audacity to pull something like this. All right, so here she is.
Ask you to have mercy upon the people in our country who are scared now. There are gay, lesbian, and transgender children in Democratic, Republican, and independent families, some who fear for their lives. And the people who pick our crops and clean our office buildings, who labor in poultry farms and meatpacking plants, who wash the dishes after we eat in restaurants and work the night shifts in hospitals, they may not be citizens or have the proper documentation, but the vast majority of immigrants are not criminals. They pay taxes and are good neighbors. They are faithful members of our churches and mosques.
When is Trump going to sign an executive order banning sign language interpreters at these things?
There's been talk about that.
Yeah, you'd think he would. I guess this was before he got back to the office. So this is before he could really do anything as president, right?
Synagogues, wadara, and temples. I ask you to have mercy, Mr. President, on those in our communities whose children fear that their parents will be taken away, and that you help those who are fleeing war zones and persecution in their own lands to find compassion and welcome here. Our God teaches us that we are to be merciful to the stranger, for we were all once strangers in this land.
All right, so that was the part that would later invoke the ire of Donald Trump, but this is pretty hilarious footage, so we get to see this in real time. We get to see, this is like the Big Lebowski, the reaction shots to when Jesus comes over and you see, Walter and the dude and Donnie sitting there looking at him with this very blank stare. Here's Donald Trump, Melania, J.D. Vance, and Usha looking on, hearing this lecture from her.
In the name of our God, I ask you to have mercy upon the people in our country who are scared now. There are gay, lesbian, and transgender children in Democratic, Republican, and independent families. Some who fear for their lives.
And Trump must have forgotten he's Hitler now. He doesn't have to take this shit. He's already president. What's he sitting there and taking it like that, right? I mean, can't you do something about this? Can't you stop it?
I think ICE was
nice
already deployed to Chicago.
He's pretty nice for a Hitler, right? Yeah. I mean, pretty polite for a Hitler, able to just kind of grin and bear it.
The people who pick our crops and clean our office buildings, who labor in poultry farms and meatpacking plants, who wash the dishes after we eat in restaurants and work the night shifts in hospitals, they may not be citizens or have the proper documentation, but the vast majority of immigrants are not criminals. They pay taxes and are good neighbors. They are faithful members of our churches.
Don't forget, wasn't it Amy Klobuchar who planned the inaugural ceremonies? Didn't she have a big hand in this? Because she spoke here. Maybe this was a setup. Maybe this was a plant. Because it comes there and in pretty confrontational terms.
That's my question. Is this like the regular bishop? Did they bring her in just to troll Trump?
It had to be a setup of some kind, because she tells, all of that, if you were to just go there and bring that message of whatever, unity and, rights and things like that, without the direct appeal to him where you say people are scared right now, she's putting him on the spot by saying, okay, well, people are afraid, implying that people now are afraid because you're coming in, right? So that was what really put him on the spot in a way that Trump did not particularly care for, as we will learn. But, one thing that makes me think that perhaps this was a setup and planning is that she really did a media circuit after. She went on CNN, and here she is on The View. Now, once again, we can't play video from The View, but here she is talking about her responsibility yesterday morning.
Responsibility yesterday morning, was to reflect, to pray with the nation for unity. And as I was pondering what are the foundations of unity, I I wanted to emphasize respecting the honor and dignity of every human being, basic honesty and humility. And then I also realized that that unity requires a certain degree of mercy and compassion and understanding. And so knowing that a lot of people, as I said, in our country right now are really scared, I wanted to take the opportunity in the context of that service for unity to say we need to treat everyone with dignity, and we need to be merciful. And I was trying to counter the narrative that is so divisive and polarizing, and in which real people are being harmed.
Okay.
So that was her response the day after. Donald Trump, the so-called bishop who spoke at the National Prayer Service on Tuesday morning, was a radical. Oh, so he was president by then. So he had signed orders by then. That's right. So this was day 2. This was the 21st. I'm thinking this was inauguration day. It's part of the ceremonies, I guess. The so-called bishop who spoke at the National Prayer Service on Tuesday morning was a radical left hardline Trump hater. She brought her church into the world of politics in a very ungracious way. She was nasty in tone and not compelling or smart. She failed to mention the large number of illegal migrants that came into our country and killed people. Many were deposited from jails and mental institutions. It's a giant crime wave that is taking place in the USA. Apart from her inappropriate statements, the service was a very boring and uninspiring one. She is not very good at her job. She and her church owe the public an apology. That's right, and this was Reverend Lorenzo Sewell in Woke on Woke Bishop calls her a heretic.
She was so arrogant. The way she didn't even acknowledge the President of the United States of America. She had an opportunity to minister the gospel. Instead of that, she is a heretic. She should never be allowed to preach the message of Jesus in her life because she's not even talking about Jesus.
This is why no one's going to these. Yeah, this is why these denominations are dying. Sadly,
as I understand, Episcopalians, without getting conspiratorial, they're like 1% of the population, but I think 11 presidents have been Episcopalians. They're like a pretty elite cohort, right, who tend to be like more socially liberal. They're like the Davos of Christianity.
Because under the colonies, you had the Church of England, but after the Revolution, you couldn't have that kind of connection to the monarchy anymore. So those churches, they were getting seized. In order to preserve themselves, they became Episcopalian churches. So these upper crust colonists who had been Church of England all became Episcopalian.
Yeah, so it's a pretty elite cohort. But she's not backing down. I'm not going to apologize. The bishop who confronted Trump speaks out. So this was an interview, a print interview that she gave with Time Magazine. Trump called you a radical left hardline Trump hater. What's your response to that? I don't hate President Trump. I strive not to hate anyone, and I dare say that I am not of the radical left either, whatever that means. That is not who I am. No, you certainly are not. He said you're not very good at your job. That's for other people to judge, so he is certainly entitled to his opinion. And he said you should apologize. Will you apologize? I am not going to apologize for asking for mercy for others. Anything else? I think it's all of us, I think it's not about me. It's about the kind of country we're called to be. And that's why I did my best to try and speak to present an alternative to the culture of contempt, and to say that we can bring multiple perspectives into a common space and do so with dignity and respect, and that we need that. And the culture of contempt is threatening to destroy us, and I'm getting a little bit of taste of that this week. Well, yes, there is a culture of contempt. This is what we've kind of been talking about over the course of this show. All of this austerity breeds a culture of contempt. And if you do not address that, then the culture of grievance, the culture of resentment, and the culture of contempt is what's obviously going to emerge as the dominant cultural strain that then defines the politics of the era. This is why appeals to people's good nature and goodwill fall flat. And a lot of people say, well, that's because of Trump. No, it's not because of Trump. Trump is here because the liberal class has squandered the goodwill of the American people, who as we've been talking about this whole time, elected Barack Obama twice. That's where a lot of this cultural push has come from. Not necessarily from Obama himself, but I've heard the argument made. I think it's a very compelling one, that the woke stuff really emerged in response to the Tea Party and Occupy Wall Street, both having a very class-based critique of the system, both opposing the bank bailouts from both the left and the right. I think that's a very, very compelling processing of that timeline. But as working people's material conditions have been degraded, these appeals fall on deafer and deafer ears. Now, if she was radical left, if she was really radical left and she wanted to make an appeal on immigration, she should take a look at this and be talking more about this. All of the South American countries that had their governments overthrown by the CIA since 1947.
Every South American country which has had its government overthrown by the CIA since 1947. Costa Rica in 1948. Guatemala, 1954, El Salvador, 1979, Nicaragua, 1981, Panama, 1989, Paraguay, 1954, Brazil, 1964, Peru, 1968, Chile, 1973, Uruguay, 1973, Argentina, 1976, and Venezuela in 2002.
All right, so there you have it. So that is a far left. If you were really radical left, that's what you'd be talking about. That's what you'd be talking about.
Right.
But all liberals like this bishop do is go up and virtue signal about how they really wish we could just be better. We could be better. And, you know, you call me a communist or Marxist or, yeah, be nice, basically. Own nothing and be nice, right? You'll own nothing and be happy. This is you'll own nothing and be nice. That really is like the liberal commands. And they really demand that of the public, that you will be nice to each other. You will be tolerant of each other, even as your conditions devolve year after year after year with no apparent change, no matter who comes to power, no matter what they promise you. And that, of course, leads you to this place. And, you know, so of course she got some backlash for this because that's the only thing you could get. It's the only thing you could get. If you're going to single out the president and say, hey, people are afraid that you're in power, and so you better be nice. Well, what did we talk about? We've talked about a lot in this show about the collapse of the liberal project, right? And so this really kind of sums up everything we're talking about with these executive orders, whether it's gender, whether it's DEI, whether it's the ICE roundups that are happening right now as we speak. It is a collapse of the liberal command to us that we just be nice to each other, that we just accept each other. I would love to live in the world she's talking about. I think almost everybody would. I think almost everybody would. I think that's the world people thought they were going to get when they voted for Barack Obama in 2008, when Barack Obama won, 350 plus electoral votes, when Barack Obama won Indiana, right? That's the world people thought they were getting. And that world never came. And now you have the reaction to that, which is why she's getting all shit from MAGA, and very few people are rushing to her defense. Or, I don't know. I mean, you're on Facebook more than I am. Are your lib friends going to bat for her?
I'm not seeing a lot of that. It's been funny, and this is what everybody's observed about that. They don't know whether to shit or wind their wristwatch, man. They really don't know how to deal with this. For a minute, they started going after oligarchy, but the people that they really listened to, I think, realized pretty quickly, whoa, we don't want to go there. We don't want to talk about that. So now, yeah, going back, the DEI thing, they've kind of been trying to sink their teeth into that. They just don't even know what to talk about. You know, we talked about this earlier offline. Most people who were attracted to this kind of liberalism are status-seeking kind of people.
Right.
And anyone, no matter how dumb you are at this point, when the culture swerves this drastically, you can't help but notice. And they don't want to get left behind. They don't want to get left behind. Look, what were the yuppies? They were the hippies. That was the cliche during the Reagan years. All these former hippies, they fully embraced the aesthetics and the attitudes of Reaganism. A lot of these people in a few years are going to be fully on board with Trump's agenda.
Yes, I think that's right. And this is why there's just not really a natural audience for what she's talking about here. This is why I think it was I don't know. Was this a setup? We know that Amy Klobuchar had some hand in the inaugural proceedings. Is that how she got there? I've heard speculation about
maybe.
That.
And you're right. It says it all that she didn't say, remember the poor. Right. A lot of people are economically deprived. And actually, that might have gotten over if she had said something like that. She might have gotten backlash for that.
Apparently she's been pretty silent on the Israel-Gaza issue from what I've heard on Twitter. That's what I've heard. I haven't seen any statements of hers to point to. I certainly would have put them in here if I found any. So there's just not really a natural audience for this anymore. And so that's why I think ultimately very few people rush to her defense to take her side on that.
No, in fact, now that you mention it, I hadn't thought about it. I haven't seen one person talk about that.
Like they said, this did not create the kind of culture war, skirmish, that you would think it would. It kind of came and went. And I think that's why. All right, we will move on here. What do we got here? Bejan Edemad, thank you for the $5. Biden pardoning his crime family left my mom in total despair. Her hero has truly fallen as denial no longer an option. Oh, your mom was a Biden guy? My mom was a Biden girl? A Biden, what would you call that? She was a Biden supporter. I bet Matt Taibbi and Jimmy Dore do not agree with your comments on federal workers' remote work, but I commend you for having a non-tribal stance. I don't know what they think about that.
I have absolutely no idea what they think.
I have no idea.
Like literally zero idea.
Zero. I would assume why make someone go to work why make someone go to the office if they could just work just as easily at home? 1984 Pacific Bell study of employees working via teletype showed them much more productive. No talking about last night's game at the water cooler. No social media either. Interesting. Thank you, Sparky. Sparky, people would find excuses to come into the office just for the social aspect of it. Thank you. Appreciate that. Sparky says if a person working from home is getting over on their employer, the employer made a mistake hiring them in the first place, they'd have been just as worthless at the office. Yeah, I tend to think that's probably right. I think that, and look, I think the hidden aspect of this is that when you go to work for 8 hours, are you really doing 8 hours worth of work? Or are you doing 2 or 3 hours worth of work and 5-6 hours of dicking around? Don't you dick around at the office too?
I stayed with somebody for a few months during the COVID lockdowns who was working from home. And, man, it looked a lot healthier to me. She got to spend more time with her kids and she got her work done. She had her meetings scheduled. And
you
she
do
would
the shit you
go to her meeting. It wasn't a problem.
Right. Exactly. Barry Dominic Graham, I just wanted to tell you guys that you're both a credit to humanity, being consistently on the right and moral side of everything. Oh, well, thank you. That's high praise. With warmest regards, genuine respect, and deepest gratitude. Thank you, Barry. Appreciate that very much. RBGH fam, am I mistaken? Is what Trump said more of a retort against the non-binary types than the gender dysphoric medical, sports, prison based on biology? What would you say to that?
Say it again.
I'll do it again. Am I mistaken? Isn't that what Trump said more of a retort against the non-binary types than the gender dysphoric medical, sports, prison based on biology? I mean, what he said was pretty general.
What he said was very general and really not accurate because he's talking about gender. Or he says gender. He's really talking about sex and only and not even. Is it really an order on gender? Again, that's like a personal matter. It's more of a philosophical matter. Gender. They're only recognizing two sexes.
Right. The amazing Blumpkin. I thought he was talking. But that's what I said. Well, yeah, obviously people have sex in prison. I was joking that the appeal of a trans prison is that there's people in there who look like you. There are people in there who look like they are the sex that you are naturally attracted to, no matter what your sexual orientation. So it's a much more, I would imagine, gratifying place to be sexually than in a prison where you're, locked with everybody who identifies as one gender.
Yeah, no, look, you write that up if you're not able to go. I'm going to bring that to Seattle. Shama will love that proposal.
I should submit that to her. She wants me to submit a, video, like a pre-record.
Yeah.
I don't know if I'm going to be live.
It should all be that.
All be that. Oh, no, before. I would pay to see just like the look on her face.
Just the reaction shots would be worth it.
What did you send me? It's funny. P. Walker, make sure migrants remain employed to keep my carrots affordable, but don't speak about how actual American citizens who haven't seen an actual wage increase in decades. Yes, I agree with that. DJT should have pulled.
Can I run out for a second? That was a big cup of coffee.
Oh, all right. Yeah. All right, no problem. All right, we're gonna do the Whitney Webb. I know we're really dangling this Whitney Webb over your head, aren't you? DJT should have pulled a Kanye and grabbed the mic from the bishop. I'm gonna let you finish. Love to you all from chilly Florida. Yes, snowy Florida. How do you like that? Snowy Florida. Getting some snow in New Orleans and in Florida. All right, while Russ is gone, we're gonna give you a word from one of our dissident sponsors. An excerpt from Die Coast by Cecilia is read by Andrew Malcolm in the movie Heidi's Friend Diogenes. The reading is a story about Einstein's philosophical friendship with Hedwig Born, 1916 to 1921, and it overlaps a videographic exploration of the COVID era, 2021 to 2023. In 1920, in Bad Nauheim, Einstein had a confrontation with Johannes Stark, later described by Max Born as the moment that the great danger of anti-Semitism to German science first appeared. These events are juxtaposed against COVID-era science as illuminated through the eyes of John Campbell, Russell Brand, Ursula Franklin, and Malcolm himself. You can find the excerpt at andrewrichardmalcolm.com, as well as the paperback and ebook. You can also order the book through your local bookstore. Check it out, dissidents, and much love to the community. That's right. So you can go to andrewrichardmalcolm.com and support the work of one of our dissident sponsors and dissident artists. If you have a book or a passion project or a podcast or a musical album that you would like to promote on the show, or even just a small business, you can reach out, go to dodissidents.com/sponsors and become one of our partners. But if you would like to support this dissident community, andrewrichardmalcolm.com. Thank you very much for your support, everybody. And thank you to Andrew for partnering with us. Okay, what do we got here? Russ, great on class, not so much on gender, my 2 cents. Well, that's the point of the culture wars.
Yes, exactly.
That's what they do.
Exactly.
All right. Yusuf, thanks for the 20 pounds. Appreciate that very much. Okay, let's go to, all right, this is the big one. This is the one you're all waiting for. Look at what a crowd we got in here. 3,766 across all the platforms, 3,040 on YouTube, 1,500 on Rumble. That's good for
In the year 2525. In the year.
Oh, shit.
Yeah, what's going on?
Got to kill the loop. All right, here we go. All right, folks, this is the fun one. Buckle up. Buckle up. Really fun segment incoming. All righty. So
I am looking forward to this one.
Really looking forward to this one. So it starts out with Brett Weinstein sharing this celebratory video of Donald Trump signing an executive order to leave the World Health Organization. Very funny video. Very short, but very funny one. Here's Donald Trump learning. Ooh, this is a good one.
Withdrawing from the World Health Organization, sir?
Ooh, that's a big
Ooh.
one.
Ooh. Like, I feel like his reaction is like
it's very Homer
proportionate to
Simpson.
Yeah. Ooh. But I feel like the enthusiasm really is proportionate to what a big lib own it's going to be.
Withdrawing from the World Health Organization, sir?
Ooh. Ooh, the Manhattanites are going to cry a lot over this one. Ooh, I'm excited over this one. Give me the pen. Give me the pen. Give me the pen. All right. So Whitney Webb, naysayer that she is, writes, in response to this, she quote tweets Brett Weinstein and she says, to be fair, Trump also left the WHO in mid-2020 and then just redirected what was once WHO funding to the Gates-funded Gavi Vaccine Alliance. While leaving the WHO is positive, it is not the slam dunk some are advertising, especially considering Gates' recent comments on Trump's enthusiasm for his vaccine innovation proposals. I get called a lot of names for pointing things like this out, but remembering what happened last time is important and often instructive about the present, especially when few people in media are inclined to point these kinds of things out. Seems like a fairly innocuous statement to me. She sources everything she says here. Sources for claims, RE 2020. So this was the first source. Trump halts World Health Organization funding over coronavirus failure. He did this very early on in the pandemic. April 14th, 2020 is the date of that. So you're talking about just like 1 month in. Then in July, this was another article that she sourced to. Trump administration sends letter withdrawing U.S. from World Health Organization over coronavirus response. And finally here, U.S. funding of global health strengthens COVID-19 fight. Highlighted text, which I did. The United States has donated $1.16 billion more to Gavi, the Vaccine Alliance, to prevent the spread of infectious diseases worldwide. So it sounds to me, and you tell me if this is a fair interpretation, I think it is, as someone who's admittedly not an expert on this topic, that what Whitney is basically saying is good that he withdrew from the WHO, but he did this last time very early on in the pandemic, and ultimately it kind of seemed like more a symbolic stance than a real one, because while withdrawing from the WHO, we ended up funding another Bill Gates outfit, and since the WHO is so reliant on Gates family funding, you're kind of just moving that money from one place to another. As long as you're refilling the coffers of Gates, how serious is the divestment from the WHO? That seems to be what she's saying.
Well, sure. This is what I think will happen if they do any real reforms of Pentagon spending. They're just going to send that money to Elon Musk to develop drone swarms, or they're not actually going to stop spending that money that way.
Right. So it seemed like a fairly innocuous comment. Hey, she agrees with what he did, but she said, hey, he did this last time very early on in the pandemic, and, you know, the impact of that was very questionable. Because it seems like it was more a symbolic stance than one that actually resulted in any beneficial change of course. That seems to be what she said. Tell me in the chat if that is fair or not. Seems pretty reasonable to me. So surely Brett Weinstein's going to react well to this, right? It's hard to imagine what you're complaining about, Whitney Webb. President Trump took a necessary step for which I thanked him. I did not argue it was sufficient. As for your observation about the previous WHO exit, you are connecting dots that are not intrinsically connected. It's a bad habit you should correct. Whoa. Oh, wow.
You're talking to me all wrong. It's the wrong tone.
I mean, that seems like a bit of an extreme response. I mean, if you agree that it wasn't a sufficient move, you could have just left it at that, right? Like, you didn't have to respond at all. But no, he makes it a point to put her in her place for connecting too many dots. Didn't sound like what she was saying was all that conspiratorial. Sounds like she's saying, well, we withdrew from the WHO, we withheld funding from the WHO, but then if you give it to a Gates vaccine alliance anyway, then you're kind of just more shuffling money around.
Well, and this is what grifting hypocrites these people are. That should be a sentiment that Brett Weinstein should wholeheartedly endorse. He ingratiated himself with the MAGA crowd with his COVID stance during the lockdowns. Right. You were one of the people speaking out against the vaccines most loudly, speaking out against people like Bill Gates. You should wholly endorse this. But no, that wouldn't sufficiently be puckering up to kiss Trump's ass.
Right. Exactly. Like, you'd think a response to this would be, thanks for pointing that out, Whitney. We'll stay vigilant, but this is a good first step. Boom. Done.
Right.
Instead,
there you go. That would be fair.
Yeah. Instead, this is what happens. So Whitney Webb replies, I'm not complaining. I said it is positive about the WHO, but that some, including Liz Churchill in the tweet you quoted above, are framing this as a huge win, and that the past precedent of what happened during the last WHO exit matters. And yes, I do think Trump cutting WHO funding and then saying he will take that money and channeling it to the areas that most need it, and right after touting a partnership with Gavi and subsequently giving them billions, are in fact connected. Well, yes, they're obviously connected. That's not connecting dots that aren't there. I mean, that's pretty obvious to me. I find it strange that many COVID-era dissident figures seem to have amnesia about the Trump administration's early COVID policies and the mRNA vaccines production. Actions of both administrations should be scrutinized and criticized, and Trump's record should be remembered as he enters a new term. Again, what's the problem? Well, Walter Kern now joins the pile-on. He tweets that he comes in. Whitney is a black pill artist with a bot army and a live troll army and many odd munchkins behind her, plus lots of other curious resources. Following how she does her thing for a little while. Her techniques are simple. No one is as radical and brave as Whitney. No one sees the deep state layers like Whitney.
It just says deep layers.
Deep layers. Oh, pardon me. Deep layers like Whitney. Thank you. Optimists and enthusiasts and people who get a little upbeat about any non-Whitney approved leader or figure or policy are dupes. They might even be secret agents of the super quadruple ultra mega crypto Zion Thiel Musk left right everything octopus that only Whitney is truly opposing on this godforsaken tokenized commodified poison for profit etc. earth of ours. Not bad. Not bad. Follow the responses to this post if you want to see what I'm talking about. And don't ever let her bum you out or turn you against one another or cause you to suddenly lose all faith in people you used to like or trust before Whitney, the only true seeress, came along. She who sees through all the ops. I know the game when I see it. I play it now and then myself. We all do, but not like Whitney. Wow. Wow. Talk about the lady doth protest too much.
Those are some big words for a guy whose whole career consists of riding Matt Taibbi's coattails.
Yeah, there you go. Yes. Jeremy Lafredo says, Walter, what Whitney's saying, by the way, folks, so a lot of our friends are in this segment and a lot of our listeners are in this segment. I sourced a lot of reply tweets from a lot of you guys, so keep an eye out. You might see yourself. What's that?
We have the best people.
That's right. We have the best people. So you might see yourself on the big screen. Walter, what Whitney's saying is entirely true, though. Last time Trump left the WHO, he gave all the money to Gates, whose priorities are the exact same as the WHO and is the biggest funder of the WHO. I'm not sure if he's the biggest. I think he's what is he, the second biggest? Something like he's in the top 3 or 4. But anyway, point remains valid. But curious response, Walter Kern, that doesn't matter.
Which at that moment, all credibility you had just packed up and took a flight to Mexico. What? So why did you say what?
You went on that whole rant.
It doesn't matter that she's right.
That she's correct.
What she said actually correct. Wow.
You go on a whole rant insulting her, calling her holier than thou, calling her basically a party pooper, right? She doesn't want you to have faith in the people we have faith in, right? And then when Jeremy Lafredo very politely points out, but she's right, isn't she? Yeah. Well, no, that doesn't matter.
Politely, didn't attack him. Yeah.
He continues, never once mentioned her facts, did I? Now, this is a confusing. I'm surprised Jeremy replied to this so quickly because it would have taken me an hour to ponder how to reply to that, being like, well, okay. So he says, no, I guess you didn't. So your criticism in this particular instance is that she's making people feel a certain way about Trump using facts. Yes, that's correct. Yeah. She's making you feel bad. She discredits people, other journalists or personalities, not just politicians. That's her game. Look at the example I gave with the Rogan takedown. Okay, so we're going to quickly jump aside here because this gets a little complicated. So he posts in a related tweet, here is the Whitney Webb scam at work. Target, Joe Rogan, crime, being a dupe or a plant or an asset of the dark overlords that only Whitney is battling in any true serious fashion. Evidence against Rogan, he doesn't worship Whitney enough. Case closed. Notice the cultish femdom touch where someone else makes the argument first and she comes in later to affirm it and pat her helper's head. So this was what he quote tweeted. Okay. I mean, if there's more to this, maybe there's more to this, but this is what he quote tweeted. So I'm going off of his argument here. This is what he's referring to as her attack on Joe Rogan. Joe Rogan has been podcasting for almost 15 years and has recorded 2,167 episodes and counting. It speaks volumes that he's never invited on Whitney Webb, which shows a conversation. Amazes me that Tucker, Joe Rogan, Tim Castor, even comic Dave Smith have never had Whitney Webb on. Tango Romeo Wiz says, I'm pretty sure she's been on Rogan, and she replies, I've never been invited. Now, unless I'm missing something, which, again, even if I am, that's what he presented as his evidence, that she attacked Joe Rogan. Like, what the fuck are you talking about?
She literally just stated a fact.
I've never been invited.
That she's never been invited.
I mean,
that's all she said. That's your evidence?
That's your evidence?
That's your evidence. That's your comeback after you've confessed that you are not having a fact-based argument against what she said. That's what you pull out. Wow.
I've never been invited. All right, so then Sean Hannon says, if that was your best example, you've lost, dude. Lost what, says Walter. Your argument that her reply was an attempt to discredit Rogan. Yeah, what? She said, I've never been invited on.
That's it. Statement of fact.
She said.
Simple statement of fact.
She didn't say, I've never been invited on because he's a CIA goon. Nothing. I've never been invited on.
No.
So this goes back. Okay, we're not going to read this again, but this just resets. Okay, so now we're back on this thread here. So our friend Nick RBN says, so you're essentially mad because she's not buying into your cult and you can't debunk her. Yes, that is it. Just the Thought says, can you refute her claims? If not, then you're just projecting your anger and fear onto her because deep down you know she's right. If people stop being scared and recognize no person in a position of power is coming to save us, then we could organize ourselves. Wow, yes, then we would organize ourselves. Yes, that's correct. Now look at this guy. Oh, look, we have a revolutionary nose ring and all. Refute the claims or move on. Personal insults are childish and don't take the place of an actual argument. Like what children these people are.
Yes.
What children these people. This all started from her saying, I agree with withdrawing from the WHO, but last time he did it, it didn't mean everything we thought. Like, that's literally all she said.
Right.
And then triggers just an absolute meltdown by not just the MAGA diehards. See, what makes the Weinstein thing interesting is that he is not necessarily full MAGA in his branding, but he is an influencer. This is why I say a lot of these content creators now serve as influencers. They're not journalists. They're not commentators. They're influencers. He's glommed on to the MAGA movement, and now a lot of MAGA people watch his show and fund his operation, and he's trying to give Donald Trump a nice, big, open-lipped kiss on the ass cheek, and in comes someone who triggers him because he knows she's right. See, she wouldn't trigger an actual MAGA person this way because an actual MAGA person would say, well, whatever, she's a naysayer, she's not part of the club. But a guy like Weinstein...
Actually, you know what? In my experience, there are a lot of MAGA people who would say, yeah, you're right.
Yeah, that's true. They might even be more inclined to give her props for that. The thing about Weinstein is he's smart enough to know that she's actually right. And he gets triggered by that because by reminding him... because by her interjecting some truth there, she reminds him of what a grifting liar he actually is, because she triggers it because he realizes that, yes, what she's saying is true, but he just wants to affirm Trump in front of his audience because that's good for your brand if you've wed yourself to the MAGA movement in a way that he has. Anything else before we move on? We got plenty more.
I think it's very hard for a lot of these people who, you know, Weinstein was a lib and the wokies were mean to him at Evergreen, and legitimately, I mean, you know, they did terrible things and drove him off campus. And we've seen this with so many. We've seen this with so many that they wind up not being able to have a career that they had before. Like, where's he going to get hired as a professor now?
Right.
You know, he's gonna have to go to Hillsdale or something. Like, nobody's going to hire him among the liberal class that tends to dominate academia. So now, I'm assuming he was making a decent living. So it's not like he needs to compensate for a, you know, McDonald's worker income. He has to compensate for what he was making. right? He's accustomed to a certain lifestyle. That means you need to take in a certain amount of income. This is the grift. This is the grift. And very few people are comfortable being consciously hypocritical. So once this becomes how you make your living, you're going to convince yourself that you share the beliefs of these people that you're making your income from.
Exactly. And, that's an important point. I should probably say, he's not so much lying as he is deluding himself into thinking that this is a legitimate, message to be putting out, right? It's an exercise in self delusion, and she pierces that bubble for him, and so that's how you get that lash out, right? Hey, Misty Winston, we know her. Argue the points she made or shut the fuck up. Indy, another friend of ours. You clearly don't know it, Walt. This is just sad. It feels like projection here. Does her thing for a little while. Techniques are simple. Okay, buddy. Yeah, this is a person who, as I understand, publishes like a 25,000 word article every couple of months on her independent website. Like, this is not a clout chaser. It doesn't seem like a clout chaser to me. Yeah. Jax Page, another friend of ours. So can you actually refute anything she said? Anything at all? Okay, so folks, I appreciate everybody's contributions to this discussion, but I must give the prize for best reply to our friend Snow Himbo. Let me translate what this black pill nonsense actually means for everyone. Whitney is poking holes in the delusion I am trying to reinforce, and that hurts my feelings, so I'm going to hurl weightless fluff instead of addressing any of her arguments. Yes. Yep, that's exactly what's going on here. All right, Weinstein comes back in. I mean, can you believe, it's just unbelievable. It's just unbelievable that this caused this much of a brouhaha. So Weinstein comes back in and quote tweets Walter. He says, but the dots, Walter, the dots, they connect. They all connect. Again, what we're talking about is defunding WHO, funding another Bill Gates initiative. She thinks that's more a reform in style than substance, if you will.
Right.
That's it.
Which, and this is a very funny tack for a guy who held the line on COVID and was constantly being accused, as many in that space were, of being a conspiracy theorist. It's a very funny direction for him to go in.
Well, it's the same as the Libertarian Party. Like, they just, not the whole Libertarian Party, but the Mises Caucus who endorsed Trump. Like, they are more in line with what Whitney's saying about COVID, and she's a Trump critic, yet they don't seem to have it in them to really hold Trump responsible for a lot of that. It's this real cognitive dissonance.
This is overall, this is the theme when you decide that you are going to join up, that you're going to sign up. Walter, I don't know his stuff really proceeding, latching onto Matt Taibbi's fame to build a higher profile for himself. I would imagine he's in a similar kind of a lane. This is what happened with a lot of these folks. They got attacked by the liberals. They hate the liberals. And it's a lot easier to pick a team. It's very difficult being in a rough neighborhood without joining a gang. They all wind up joining the gang. And once you join a gang, you're compromised. Your value as a commentator becomes worthless because you're biased. It's very obvious that you're never really going to call out your gang.
Right. Exactly. They all connect, and once you see the picture, you'll know with certainty that there is no hope, no rational plan, no approach, because nothing is beyond their control, Walter. Nothing and no one. Get it? The only rational approach is total paralytic cynicism. So he's basically accusing her of blackpilling people, as Snow Himbo said. Translation, this was mine. Trump supporters in my audience give me money, and so I have to convince myself he's worth supporting. Journalists like Whitney Webb trigger me because they remind me of what a grifting liar I really am. Like I said, I would probably amend to what a self-deluded grifter I am. But it's the same thing. At a certain point, you're trying so hard to make fact patterns fit a narrative. It crosses into dishonesty. I think that's fair. That's probably fair.
I think it's fair.
Not as precise as I could have been, but fair. Hey, that's Twitter, right? Whitney Webb says, "Are you even familiar with my work?" So now she responds to him. "Have you ever read anything I've written or watched any of my interviews? I've never said any of these things, literally not a single one. And it speaks volumes that you can't respond to the facts of Trump's comments and funding on Gavi and instead have to rely on fabrications about my character and reporting and an image of a 90s cartoon that I doubt you have ever watched, since if you did, you might realize that you and Walter have succumbed to the election season Ren and Stimpy happy, happy, joy, joy helmet that negatively impacts rational discourse." Yes. Or maybe it's the fact that I'm one of the few voices on this platform that criticizes the CIA-linked tech oligarch who was a longtime employer of your brother. Ooh, feel free to clarify. Well, he does not clarify. I'm quite familiar with your work, Whitney Webb. I find myself in an excellent position to assess its quality because it periodically includes claims about me that I know to be false. Further, you do not have a strong record of correcting your errors. Your claim that Trump redirected WHO funding to Gavi appears to show both patterns. You have connected dots that are not actually connected, and you won't acknowledge it. Again, I don't understand why that claim. I don't understand what that even means. Honestly.
I think what he's trying to say is, well, you can't prove there's a link between him defunding WHO and funding Gavi. Therefore, it's unconnected. I think that's what he's trying to say.
Right, but what she's saying is that Bill Gates is the common link between those two things.
Well, of course.
That makes
he's making a very legalistic argument.
Right, like it's a very technical argument that he's making. I mean, what she's basically saying is that how big a thumb in the eye is it to the WHO if you're just giving the money to Bill Gates?
If you're just giving money to Gates, right?
Right, exactly.
Which presumably Brett Weinstein, I wasn't listening to him all the time during COVID. I did on occasion. I'd have to assume he went off about Bill Gates's role in distributing and promoting the vaccine.
I would imagine. Well, he says, I mean, look, he admits that what she's saying here is not wrong. He's just saying she's being very negative by being overly conspiratorial
being a negative Nelly
in how she presents it. All of this would be less concern if the upshot of your efforts weren't to demotivate people who are quite correctly concerned about the degree of collusion, deception, surveillance, and blackmail in our system by leading them to believe that everyone is in on it and there's nothing to be done. That is disrespectful of people like myself who, one, are what they appear, and two, are making a difference in spite of the massive power disadvantage we face. It's profitable to you and dangerous for the world. So, yes, Whitney, I've had it with you. Your work protects those who abuse power by portraying them as unbeatable. It's give up David stuff, and I resent it. The ridicule you now face is earned, and my sympathy limited. You are doing Goliath's bidding, whether that's your intention or not. Absurd. Absurd.
Okay,
what a laughably absurd thing to say. You're trying to jump up and down and say, isn't Donald Trump the savior we all needed? That's all you're doing. That's all you're doing. You're not doing anything to expose the degree of collusion, deception, surveillance, and blackmail in our system. You're not doing any of that she's not doing. The only thing you're doing is trying to convince people that Donald Trump is the bulwark against that. And what she's saying is he made a good decision, but he made this same decision 5 years ago, and it didn't turn out as good as we hoped it would.
Right.
That's the only argument here.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, it says more about them that they were that triggered by such an innocuous statement than it says about her. And first of all, so to address what he's saying here, as we pointed out, that's a very legalistic distinction he's trying to make, and it doesn't really hold up. No, there's nothing she said there that's wrong. And if you think that's not in any way connected, the money came out of here and went there, or at the very least that the one undermines the value of the other, you're being willfully blind to that connection. Obviously, saying that her reporting black pills people, she cannot be held responsible for the impact that the things that she finds, which Walter himself said he cannot dispute, makes people despair. That's not her responsibility. She's a reporter. She's not running some kind of a political movement. She doesn't have an activist movement behind her. She's a reporter. That's up to you what you want to do with her work, how that makes you assess the system. So what? She should not tell people how the system actually works. She should shut up about it because it's interfering with your grift.
Right.
I mean, they really told on themselves in this chain.
Yeah. All they had to do was leave this alone.
Leave
That's
it
all they had
alone.
to do. Yeah. So she says the black pill smear is the new conspiracy theorist smear from when someone wants to dismiss inconvenient facts without engaging with them. Yes, absolutely. Exhibit A. And then she shows his Ren and Stimpy bit there. So now she starts replying to both at once here. Never mentioned once for facts, did I? My facts aren't wrong and don't matter, apparently, but I should be derided, smeared, and ridiculed for reporting them because they don't make you feel good. Do I have that right? Yes, it's bad for morale. It's bad for morale. See, the influencers who have glommed on to MAGA to drive subscriptions and revenue and exposure, they need to maintain morale. And morale means maintaining trust in the king.
Yes.
And you said something that very, very slightly, not even undermine trust in the king. Just, hey, a reminder, keep your eyes open because this didn't work out as well for us last time as we thought it might. That triggered this. That triggered this. Very happy to hear. Okay, so here she tweets, totally unrelated to this. Very happy to hear that Ross Ulbricht was finally pardoned. So Ross Ulbricht was serving like 2 life sentences for essentially creating, a dark web kind of marketplace.
Silk Road. Yeah.
Right. Silk Road. Yeah, exactly. Which, of course, like I'm not a lawyer to look into like what the innocence or guilt of that was. 2 life sentences for that is a fucking insanely draconian sentence. And of course, I mean, you know where I stand on all this incarceration stuff. So obviously I support that, as does she. Very happy to hear that Ross Ulbricht was finally pardoned and will not have to serve another day of a truly draconian sentence. His mom, Lynn, is one of the nicest, most selfless people I've ever met. She has fought and suffered for Ross every day since he was incarcerated, and I'm glad she will finally have her son back home. All right, now I know you watched the show Incel Riot Studios, so don't hate me too much, but I just had to include this. Who freed Ross? Say it. Tell Daddy you love him. Tell Daddy you love him. Tell him you love him. Say it. Say Trump did it. Justin Moon says, waiting for Whitney Webb to explain how Ross getting out is bad, actually. See? It's possible to be happy that someone unjustly imprisoned is out and not necessarily approve of the policies of that president. Biden administration let Assange go home. I can still think they were corrupt shitheads. Trump let Ross go home. I don't have to simp for his policies and cabinet picks to be happy for Ross and his mom.
A lot of people have a hard time with that concept.
But I'm sorry, like, what is it? Like, why do you need her validation? That's what it is. Is that, look, there are a lot of people who are kind of in this space whose opinions I find to be like respectable and good on a lot of these things, but who decided that they had to go all in with Trump. And I disagree with them on that part of it for exactly this reason, because you don't want to be in a position where your hair is on fire over shit like this. And I think, Whitney Webb is that reminder of why they're skeptics in the first place. And now that they're getting a taste of power because they support the president, who they feel is going to go in and, drain the swamp and upturn the deep state apple cart, shit like this reminds them of why it might not work out. And I think it triggers them. Like, why do you need her to validate your Trump love? What difference does it make to you if she gives Trump credit for this or not? She's right on the policy, just like you guys agree with her on the WHO policy. So what's the problem? The problem is she doesn't validate your decision to march in lockstep behind Trump. That's it.
Well, and it's telling where it's coming from, because it's coming from all of these libs who have been sucked into MAGA. It's coming from all these former leftists and liberals who got their feelings hurt one way or another. So, some of them legitimately got attacked and professionally threatened or ostracized by the liberal class. And, one step leads to another step, leads to another step. Before you know it, you're literally a freaking millionaire off catering to MAGA grievance. And here's Whitney, who has a lot of bipartisan respect, poking holes in this narrative that your living depends on.
Exactly.
Like the real conservatives, if you notice, where are they?
They let it go. Right. They let it go.
They left it alone. It's these guilty libs turned MAGA who
Right.
came after her.
Right. Because this reminds them of who they really are. Right.
Yep.
So the skeptical nomad says, I don't think they just let Assange out, meaning Biden. He was coerced to cooperate. And Whitney responds, he was at least allowed to go home with his family, and it was the Trump administration that had him thrown in solitary in the first place. All right, what do you think? Well, what do you think comes next?
I can't wait to see. See, I didn't follow this so closely.
It was Mike Pompeo. That's it. He's the one, not Trump. It was Mike Pompeo. I believe Trump had too much faith in his cabinet picks at the time. Just my opinion.
He's just too good-hearted. He's too trusting.
Right. He's too innocent.
He's too
innocent. I mean, he's this warrior against the deep state when we like what he does. When he doesn't like what he does, he's a child being led around by his cabinet. Right?
Yep.
So Whitney Webb, I guess, slept on it, and she tweeted this out this morning. People who say I'm so negative all the time, in my opinion, are really saying that I'm not being positive enough about the incoming administration. Not having rose-colored glasses about a second-term president when they have 4 years of political precedent that is questionable at best behind them does not make me a negative perma-doomer. We just have different opinions about a particular political brand. I can assure you I'm actually optimistic and quite happy. I derive that happiness from spending time with my friends and family in the beautiful place I call home. I would happily stuff my feed with pictures and anecdotes, but it's honestly not smart or safe to do so in today's world. I use Twitter for commentary about current events and to promote my written work. If more people read my actual work instead of assuming the occasional tweets of mine they see are my work, I think the perspective about me among some groups would be very different.
Not these people.
Professor Zinka says anyone accusing you of being gloom and doom when things are actually gloomy and doomy are simply in denial. Yes, it's their choice to live there, but you and we are under no obligation.
No pronouns.
Yeah, right, exactly. You and we are under no obligation to feed into their delusion. Well, it's interesting you mentioned that, pronouns, because what is one of the lines on that is that, yeah, you can identify who you want, but I don't have to feed your delusion. Well, they're getting mad right now that she doesn't share their delusion. They're trying to bend her to their delusion. And then I got to finish this out with Nick again because this sums it up. MAGA is currently lashing out at journalists that are exposing their daddy Trump. They're acting the same as Biden supporters. I told you guys red MAGA equals blue MAGA. There is zero difference. And this is the big one. American brains are so broken, people think the job of journalists is to do propaganda for their favorite politician and help maintain enthusiasm for them. This is a deeply unserious country. Yes, happy to end the segment with that, because whatever you think about Whitney Webb and Donald Trump, if she doesn't appreciate him as much as you do, she doesn't express gratitude for him as much as you want her to. Again, this is all emotional. This has nothing to do with substance. None of this had anything to do with substance. It is not the job of a fucking journalist to kiss your favorite politician's ass. It is our job as journalists and commentators to hold power to account and to constantly question authority. Just because that makes you butthurt doesn't mean that she's not doing her job right. It means you're not doing your fucking job right. You are an influencer at that point. If your issue with Whitney Webb, to the point where you took it that far to create this unbelievable immature, pile on, because she didn't validate your emotional investment in Donald Trump, at that point, you are a social media influencer. You are no longer a journalist, not even close to a journalist. You're not even a commentator at that point. You're an influencer. You're a brand ambassador. And it is not the job of a journalist or a commentator to be a brand ambassador. It is the job to hold power to account and constantly criticize and constantly ask questions. Questions in this case that you admit were valid questions. I mean, you said her facts are right. You just didn't think she put it in a way that legitimized your decision to glom onto the MAGA movement and not let go.
Yeah, that really demonstrated how vacuous these people are. And this is something I've mentioned a couple times. backstage at some of these events, like Rescue the Republic, I am telling you, a lot of these people are just trying to build an influencer brand. Some successfully, some not successfully. Do they not believe the things they're talking about? I wouldn't go that far, but I would say that the point isn't what they believe. It's to monetize and grow a platform off what they believe. It's a job. It's a business. It's a business like any other media figure. Now, we talked about this a little bit when Elon made his famous declaration, tweet of the year, we named it. You are the media now.
Yes.
It's true.
Yep.
It's true. And I think we really have not begun to completely reckon with what that means. By the time this space developed, this online space, this podcast space, cable news had had its filthy way with journalism for decades by then. So the concept of journalism as by definition being oppositional and often aligned to a political party had kind of been baked into the way people thought about how to go about news and journalism. And that's part of how we got here. So I think the question we have to ask is, well, how do we get objective journalism? Certainly there's space for commentary, right? But is that the same as journalism? Because in this space, it has become the same. It has become the same. Who's just doing straight journalism without opinion at this point? Do you need that? Was it always an illusion? Some people will say it was always an illusion. Taibbi, in the book right behind me there, Hate Inc., he lays out a very fascinating case that the era of objective journalism was actually not ideological. It was a business decision because the idea was you wanted to appeal to the most people. Fox News kind of broke that model by showing you could actually make more money by feeding slop to a particular audience of a particular type of what they want to hear. Now this has all been defined by that. Every channel is a brand servicing a certain narrative, a certain ideological niche. Is that enough? Can you get away from that? These are important questions. But with Whitney, she is a real kind of muckraking journalist getting into these really deep, dark corners of how power and the deep state work. And that's why she has such a broad coalition of fans who don't easily fit. She's not right. She's not left. She's a freaking journalist. She's a journalist. And to come at her like this really just exposes you as a hack.
Right. Right. And it's an important question, like, okay, so if we're the media now, do we have a responsibility to like be better than that if we're going to have this kind of reach and this kind of influence? Like when you have reach and influence, it's not just fun and games. Yeah, we give our opinion, of course, is an opinion show. We do it with a comedic twist. That's all well and good. But, once it gets into cheerleading, once it gets into just naked propaganda to the point where even emotional dissent is not tolerated, at that point, yeah, you may as well be selling, Korean sunscreen with AOC on Instagram. Like that's how you function. You just function that way for a political movement. And, Whitney Webb is a very rare example in this space of someone who, maintains a sort of viewpoint autonomy in that way.
Right.
And you need those people to explode on them. Right. Exactly. Right.
Right. If you use her work, because she's gone after plenty of Democrats.
Right.
You can use her work to talk about that. This is reality. We are living in an oligarchy. There are no people who have real power over our institutions who you can rightly call the good guys. Yeah, maybe if you're a rich influencer like Brett or Walter, these are good guys to you. But for the rest of us out here, that is an unaccountable oligarchy that offers nothing to us. Whitney, someone like Whitney, is a very rare case where she has the bandwidth, first of all, to get into all of these facts and do all of this research and get into all these deep, dark corners of how the deep state works. You guys are supposed to hate the deep state, I thought.
Right.
So you should love her reporting. You don't like her reporting because she's not playing for a team.
Exactly. Exactly. And we should just say, we are in no way questioning the wisdom and judgment or expertise of the WHO in this segment.
Of course
not at all. Not
Of
at all.
course
This
not.
is just a segment about people's different opinions on that. I'm gonna have to edit that into the beginning because I don't know if they'll go for that. I don't know if they'll go for that an hour in.
Yeah, might be a little late. Might be a little late now.
Just send that to our new point of contact.
We're gonna have to get in touch with our partner manager.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, listen, got a little bit of a pickle. All right. So we got a meeting with Rumble at 4, so we probably only got time for one of these next two. So we got to do Brand-Shmuley.
Well, it's 3.
Yeah.
We can't do Ukraine. We could do Ukraine.
You think we can get 2 in? All right, let's see. Well, we got super chats too.
It's 3. Yeah, we'll be fine. Neither one of these are that long.
Hashem Solomon, thanks for the $4.99. Appreciate that very much. Eric Maines, Bishop Marcy Darcy berated by President Bundy, and no ma'am. Thank you, Eric Maines. Appreciate that very much. Eric Suarez, Mexican libs are supporting her. The pastor. They're the ones who have her back. Haven't been on Facebook in years. It's not only for college kids anymore. No, that was like 20 years ago. That was almost 20. That was like, it's funny. When I quit college, I didn't have a Facebook for like 2 years because I assumed it was only for college kids. And then when I realized it was open to everybody, I created one again. And 17 years later, here I am. If not for that Facebook page, it never would have happened. To be fair, the Gavi funding had been passed before Trump withdrew from the WHO the first time. Thank you, Janice. Laura Kamiensky, they want people back into the office to demoralize and surveil them. They're afraid they're going to deport their masseuses and maids, so they're saying we need to bring it to people's skill that being servants. Bring in people's skill, that being servants. Thank you, Laura. Isn't Gavi now funded through this year anyway? Didn't they already fund that like years out? I thought they did.
Which one?
Gavi. They fund that like years out, right? Javier, oops, I just broke up. Oh, here, we missed this one. Your gender diatribes, crusades are nonsense. MYOB.
All right, so prove it.
Prove it. Javier, I just broke up with my OnlyFans girlfriend, so I'll have enough money to be a due dissidence member now. U.S. citizen, too, if everybody is asking. Thank you, Javier. Appreciate that very much. Space 99, yeah, Julian Assange was liked by the left when exposing Bush's crimes, but hated him when he exposed Hillary's crimes.
Oh, yeah. I remember when he was a hero. Yep.
Oh, yeah.
I was doing theater then. All those theater folks loved him then.
Yep. Absolutely. And yes, the right loved Whitney under Biden. Well, that's the other thing she mentioned. She says people get mad at her every 4 years or every 8 years, because when the party in power switches, all of a sudden the people who defend that party then turn on her, and vice versa.
Right.
They are Trumpers, not MAGA. MAGA are the Ron Paul right of the Occupy Wall Street movement that do their own research. Trumpers are the woke right. All right. Thanks, Brad Gilbert.
Hey, I did say a lot of the MAGA people would actually agree with her tweet, in my experience. There are a lot of MAGA people who are actually a little smarter than apparently Brett and Walter.
Right. Affirmative action addressed material reality. DEI replaced it. The people who identify harms are the actual people. Affirmative action. The people who identity harms are the actual people. Affirmative action was designed to help women. POC. Trump's version is as woke. Yeah, I remember, like we said in the segment, like affirmative action was in place. That was, I mean, you always had the right talking about their opposition to that, but not like this. Not like this. The DEI took that to a place that left it, as we said, just very vulnerable to that kind of backlash. Yeah.
Right. Of course. It was inevitable.
Right. Like people, I mean, there had been affirmative action for, years and years and years up until that point. Right.
And it was basically settled.
Right.
Like the conservatives here and there, you get some cracker would do an ad of he got that job ahead of you. Like here, but it wasn't mainstream.
It wasn't mainstream. Right.
This gave that a lot of fuel.
Yep. Yes. The cultural movement gave it a lot of fuel, as well as
credibility that it didn't have.
And this goes hand in hand. Like these aren't really separate things. The deteriorating economic
Yes.
conditions.
Absolutely.
Right?
Absolutely.
And that's why the cultural push coincides with that, not by accident, right? Because as those conditions deteriorate, you need to try harder and harder to sell a failed system. Oh, George, by the way, Russell, did you identify us all as hetero ducks on the last show? That's not right. I identify as hetero turkey, for instance. Kindly reconsider your statement. A bit hurtful, quite frankly. There you go. Nocturnal human. Politicians can work from out of the country just fine. They spend half the time in Israel. There you go. Yes, that's true. They can work remotely. Good point. Pornhub lobby gearing up to fight the hell out of this WFH order, I bet. Yes, absolutely. Nina Kant, 10-minute walking to work on ice to Sam's Club, 5 a.m., -6. Bundled up, and my eyeballs were cold as fuck. Yeah, that it does make your eyeballs freeze. Yeah, I had that too yesterday morning. Yeah, your eyeballs definitely feel it. Eric Husso, I could change a diaper while ordering a coup. I am a woman, I think. DEI-CIA. Eric Husso, we need the Finkelstein voice when slamming the DEI grifters. All right, good note for next time. Good note, thank you. I'll consider it next time. Federalist Papers use faction to divide the people, squashing the popular will till they called mob rule. DEI deals with servile rights. Says thank you, Mark Dansky. Appreciate that very much. All right, let's do all right, this is another fun one.
Okay. All right. So our old buddy Russell Brand is back with his carton of eggs. So for anyone who doesn't get the reference, Suge Knight said that Diddy had a ritual to break people in where they had to put a hard-boiled egg up their ass and not break the shell. And that's when they were ready for the diddler.
Right.
Now, no one has been able to adequately explain why the hell, if that's not true, Russell Brand posed with Diddy with an egg.
And a big mischievous grin on his face.
Yeah, this is long before he converted. It wasn't Easter as far as we know. So it's very, very indicative of some goings on there. So let's look a little bit at the timeline, how Russell Brand got to where he is now. If you remember, Brand was accused of sexual assault, which a lot of us chalked up to, and I would still chalk it up to, they wanted to silence him. Whether that's not taking a position on whether the claims are true or not, I don't know, but I would say there are a lot of people who don't get these. Bill Clinton appears on stage at the DNC, so it really depends on what ideological lane you're in. Now, I know this was about 2 years ago because I remember being in India hearing Russell Brand giving his response to these accusations on his show. So it was just about 2 years ago. Now, even with these accusations, for quite a while, he was doing some pretty good content on Palestine. He had Gabor Mate on, talking about the occupation. He had Chris Hedges on. The United States is vetoing resolutions in the UN for a ceasefire. This is utter insanity. It's not in anyone's interest in the United States to do this. Chris Hedges outlines the dire state in Gaza and what he calls the death of diplomacy. And here, we'll look a little bit at this video. This is as recently as April. He did a little bit about the New York Times' standards around this.
How the New York Times control the narrative around unpopular wars. The Times memo instructs its journalists to avoid using the terms genocide, ethnic cleansing, and refugee camps when writing about Palestine. Going to be a short article. It directs them to steer clear of referring to areas of Palestine as occupied territory, and even further discourages referring to Palestine as Palestine. Okay, so here's
Okay, so we don't know what videos they might have pulled out of the diddler's house. But I believe this was actually, as far as I could tell, this was September 28th, which was the day of the Rage Against the War Machine rally and the day before his appearance at Rescue the Republic with Harvey Two-Face.
New voluntary unity, not imposed top-down unity, Lord. Lord, I ask that we be brought together in these principles under your name. I pray for America, and if I have your permission, ladies and gentlemen, we'll end with the Lord's Prayer. Just do the version that you know. Our Father, who art...
All right, so you get the idea. So all of a sudden, between April and September, he finds Jesus, begins reciting the Lord's Prayer with Jordan Two-Face there, doing their whole Batman villain thing. Quite a decline. And now, this is recently, December 12th, Russell Brand spends 10 minutes explaining the serious situation, but not once does he mention Israel. And now his transformation is complete. Russell Brand and Rabbi Schmuley partying down.
Come on, Rabbi Schmuley. What the hell? Russell Brand has made me laugh. He's giving me joy. But I love that he's Bobby's buddy. I love Bobby Kennedy. We all love Bobby. God bless you. Praise the Lord. God bless you.
I think that was a Nazi
Careful,
salute that Brand gave there.
Okay, careful with the
Is
hand
that
there.
a Nazi salute? Careful there, Russell. Careful.
But I love that
Careful,
he's
my
Bobby's
namesake.
buddy. I love Bobby Kennedy. We all love Bobby. God bless
Ah,
you.
there
Praise
goes
the Lord.
Zig
God bless
Hill.
you, Russell.
There he goes. So that is quite a sad decline. Of course, we have no way of knowing, but it seems like between the initial accusation, which would have been early 2023, I believe, and September 2024, when Rescue the Republic was held, they found some videos and showed them to him. Something happened to this guy because he continued to speak about Palestine after the initial accusations. Something happened after April. He goes through this, what I consider a bullshit conversion. Around the same time, starts, just selling, grifting crap, 5G necklaces and amulets and all kinds of stuff. And now here he is fully embracing Rabbi Schmuley. Now, I have no way of knowing. I'm not saying this is absolutely positively true. Seems to me this guy got blackmailed.
I mean, there's no way of knowing, obviously. I think, when we started really realizing a shift in Russell Brand and, understand, I think I could speak for Russell too. I really, really admired Russell Brand. Like, I really thought he was one of the most powerful,
one of the best,
and intelligent and articulate voices for left politics, for anti-war politics, for anti-imperialist politics, for free speech politics. Like, I was a huge fan of his. And I started noticing his emphasis on issues just really shift pretty rapidly. And I searched out Gaza material from him because I was really looking forward to hearing him speak out about this when this all started, going down in this accelerated and horrific way, starting in October of 2023. I didn't see that footage that you just showed until today when you found it. He hasn't tweeted about this at all. You search his Twitter feed for Israel, Palestine, Gaza, nothing comes up. And, if nothing came up and we saw the Schmuley video, it would be really bad. The fact that we do have him on the record since October 7th calling this a genocide makes this photo op with Schmuley even worse, because it shows that, you haven't just turned a blind eye to this. You have paid enough attention to know that this is a genocide. And now you're going to fucking yuck it up with this guy on camera. Why? Because Bobby Kennedy's your mutual friend. You're that hooked into that ecosystem that you have to go out of your way to fucking take a picture with this guy and put it out there that you're friends with this. Like, you really have to that publicly associate with Rabbi Schmuley because of your RFK thing. Like, come on, man. You're on, like, it makes it worse that you were on record essentially calling this a genocide.
Sure. Well, having dug into it now, I didn't really dig into it. I chalked it up to, the sex allegations they made against him now, like so many before him, like Brett Weinstein. He went full into that ecosystem, both for his economic benefit and for protection from the liberal class and powerful elements within it. Now that I dug into it and I see that he did actually put on Mate, he interviewed Norm Finkelstein. He had Finkelstein on. So now, as I dug into this, I said, all right, something happened. They got some blackmail on that cat. There is no way that this is natural. I'll say this. There is not, and I don't buy that it's just business, because he was doing fine business. He was doing fine. He had a big audience. He was one of the biggest. Like, he didn't need to go full MAGA to have an audience. He didn't need to shut out the Israel conversation, because you gain audience that way. You lose at least as much audience by taking the turn he had, especially given the lane he was in as a podcaster. You know, there was no real upside to taking this turn on Israel specifically. So my theory, I have no proof of this. My theory is they showed him a tape or something, and he got his mind right, man. I don't think it's just the grift. I think he got threatened somehow.
Well, you know who would know more about this, perhaps, is Whitney Webb.
We should ask her.
We should ask her on Twitter, and then if she replies with anything but exactly we want to hear, we should rage tweet at her for 9 hours nonstop and tell her that we're very upset that she did not back our theory. I think
don't you blackpill me.
Don't you blackpill me. Don't you be a naysayer. Don't you make me feel bad.
No, but look, man, I mean, the longer you're in this space, the more you really delve into these things, the more you realize your most batshit audience members were right all along. You know, like, yes, the intelligence agencies are running psyops on the American public. Yes, a lot of the cultural discourse that seems inscrutable, impossible, and unlikely is actually doing exactly what it's intended to do: divide people, keep them fighting, keep them out from underfoot of the people who are actually running things. And yes, a lot of these public figures who do an about face like that, they're being blackmailed. They're being blackmailed by the intelligence services. I think that's certainly something that our friend Whitney would agree with, if not with personal knowledge of Brand specifically.
Yeah, well, there you go. Perhaps we'll find out someday. All right. Let's go to a super chat break, but we also have to do our supporter scroll. So folks, if you like what we do here and you want to help us do more of it, you can go to patreon.com/dudissidents, dudissidents.substack.com, or you can join our locals at dudissidents.locals.com. Perks of membership include your name up in lights here on the show scroll. You'll also get call-in access to our post-show Q&As, which take place every Sunday night. You also get access to film club screenings and special supporter exclusive live streams. So the link is dudissidents.locals.com. If you're watching on Rumble right now, you can click that bright red join button underneath the screen and sign up there. Everybody else, you can go to dudissidents.locals.com. We are doing a supporter stream on Monday. That is the 26th. So that will be 7 or 8 p.m. We'll finalize the time on Sunday. We'll let you guys know. We will be live between now and then. But we are doing a supporter exclusive live stream this Monday. So if you want access to that exclusive content and more, go to dudissidents.locals.com and sign up. It's just $5 a month. We make it worth your while. We give you lots of perks, and it comes with the good karma of supporting independent media. While we're paused, we haven't plugged your tour in a couple shows, Russell. I got the link here. Yeah, go ahead.
All right. This was the first tour I ever created. I started creating my own tours because no one was ever going to ask me as a tour company to do the kind of tours that interested me. So I created my own. Really, it wasn't even about money. It was about love of telling people very weird history facts. So I created the first and only Irish mob tour of Hell's Kitchen ever done. And what's very cool about this tour is the Irish mob was in Hell's Kitchen all the way into the 80s. So when I did all the research, I had all the addresses. I went to all of the paper research I had done. I was amazed and pleased to find all the murder sites, all the bars, all the gang hangouts, all still there. They're all still there. So all the places I talk about in my history of the Irish mob, we're going to go to the actual locations where the people got cut up in the bathroom. Literally.
There you go. All right. So dudissidents.com/tour. You can get tickets to that. It is March 14th and 15th in New York City. So dudissidents.com/tour. All right. Let's go to some more Rumble rants and super chats here. Eric Rousseau, what if one is half privileged white and half minority brown? Makes me a tan confused person, I guess. Thank you, Eric Rousseau. As a cis Latina diaper changing oppressor of poor brown people across the globe, I'm canceling the CIA for cultural appropriation. There you go. Thank you, Hillary Hitton. Appreciate that. If this Biden trans White House party happened in Bill Clinton's time, it would have gone new meaning to the blue dress. There you go. Thank you, Eric Rousseau. Appreciate that. Funniest audience. What in the hell is the point of freedom of expression, the First Amendment, if you can't take your top off on a White House lawn? Thought this was America. Oh, I'm sorry. I thought this was America.
Yeah, right.
To be fair to Biden, those were technically titties being flashed on the White House lawn. Mail. Thank you, Eric Rousseau. Hey, I saw a Cybertruck being used as a truck the other day, so maybe this post-fire community will be more socially conscious. Yeah, there you go.
You know what I just read today that's horrifying? Apparently, a lot of these LA refugees are coming to live in New York.
Oh, yeah?
Yep. Yeah, I didn't send that to you.
The Exodus, yeah. The California, New York, the New York Exodus. Stoop sign, effeminate men are frequently hollow. Yeah, right. Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Stoop Side. What if there's a vulgar comment? I said Trump is a communist, not a communist. Sorry for the bad joke. LOL. No problem. No problem. No problem. No problem. American is all circus and no bread. That's right. That's right. All circus,
that's a great
no bread.
line.
Yes. All circus, no bread. Very well put. Okay, Eric Rousseau. It's nice to be nice to the nice. There you go. Major Frank Burns. Leonard Peltier got a sentence commuted. Yeah, he's 80 and he'll spend the rest of his sentence on house arrest. Better than nothing. Typical Biden liberal half-ass or 1/8-ass gesture. That's what I said. Trump pardoned the J6ers on day one. Imagine if Biden promised the left or whatever, that he would free Leonard Peltier on day one. Or imagine Kamala did that and she issued a day one actually go out on a limb a little bit to do something politically risky to rally your base. You couldn't imagine them doing that. Russell Brand compromise, meaning the freak out is true and desperately needs those plugs from kosher sex. Thank you, Goo81. Appreciate that.
Look, we did a segment on this. He did some because somebody chatted him if he had ever been to a dinner party. Basically did the I didn't inhale thing. Yes, right. I went to the Diddy party, but I left before. Yeah, sure, that's what happened.
I left before anything bad happened. It was a very innocent time.
I left before the dozen eggs came out.
I only stayed for tea and cookies. Then I left. Yeah. You must read Sheldon Wolin, Democracy Incorporated. Thank you, Lauren Kaminsky. Appreciate that very much.
Yeah,
Sparky.
That's like Chris Hedges' favorite book, right?
Yeah, that's right. Yet you guys use your deaf skill to avoid having Whitney Webb on your show. She exposed you both as stooges eager to parrot CIA talking points. I got to assume you're joking, Sparky. We had her on Jimmy's show.
We had her on Jimmy's.
Yeah, and now now that we know her a little bit, maybe
now we got the connect.
Right now we know. Right, exactly. Michael Castillo, thanks for the $100. Wow, look at that, Michael Castillo. Appreciate that very, very much.
Blasphemy against you? Who the hell are you? Are you Jesus Christ, you loser?
F you, Donald Trump. I love Whitney Webb, and you will never tear her away from me. Beautiful. There you go. Thank you, Michael. That's very kind of you. Appreciate that very much. Philip Blair says, I don't understand how these most lethal folks feel no doom and gloom over Gaza. Are they okay with genocide? I don't understand what's their psychology. Well, that's another thing. I mean, that's totally legit. I think that's totally legit. We didn't get to it today because there's so much, and we just covered the West Bank on Tuesday, but I'm sure we'll cover this on Sunday. They're laying siege on a hospital in the West Bank. And they're outright saying that the ceasefire in Gaza has given us an opportunity to refocus our militarization efforts on the West Bank, which is the bigger prize in their view. It's a bigger chunk of the land that actually gets them to the river, in the river to the sea thing.
Exactly.
Right? And so that's the big prize that they want. Yep. And again, I mean, what has Walter Kern said about that? Zero. Brett Weinstein, what has he said about that?
Well, he's for it.
Yeah. He said after October 7th that the reaction is going to have to be brutal. Right. And I know he criticized Netanyahu for allowing it to happen. I'm sorry. I award that 0 points. Like, this is the most horrific crime of our time. If you have nothing to say about this except, well, yeah, it's going to be bad. Well, that sucks.
Well, that's why I keep saying. Look, I understand. We came out of the Bernie thing. I get it. I get the hurt. I get the pain of finding out that everything you ever believed about politics was wrong. I get it. That's not an excuse for overcorrecting and going full to the other side of it.
Right. Of course. You know, and that's something that Whitney Webb does not do. And that's they know that they've done that. They know that's the game. They know that's the bargain they've made. And when someone who refused to make that bargain, I won't even say calls them out, when they just make their presence known, it triggers them. That's exactly what that is. No doubt. Yeah. A psychic once told me I had a lot to say that people need to hear but don't want to. Think she confused me with Whitney Webb, the real truth teller. Hope these grifters remember WW when it all ends. Whitney did point out that Rogan has ex-spooks on his show weighing in on Thiel and Epstein, but not her, who wrote a 1,000-page book on it. Okay. I mean, that wasn't in his presentation, so maybe that wasn't what he chose to point to.
And I would respond to that, where's the lie?
Yeah, where's the lie? And I would also say, where's the lie? Yeah, exactly. I would always say, where's the lie? You know, Rogan did a lot more to get Trump elected than he did to really shine a light on the stuff that she's talking about there.
Right.
Trying to, and that's, I think, her beef. So if she said that, I would support her in that. But that's not what Genius there pointed to as an example of her smear job.
Well, and I'm sorry, as we pointed out in our Andreessen thing, and he's not the only case. You know, Rogan just lets these tech oligarchs go on there and say whatever shit. Right. Without doing any research, any preparation. Is he trying to support it? Well, he's definitely not trying to debunk it.
Right.
He just has conversations. I'm sorry, that's not an excuse, man. You have an enormous platform with a lot of influence. You don't just let Andreessen go on there and start accusing the one government agency that's charged with holding people like him accountable as being some kind of, backwoods Nazi outback law enforcement agency, and just go, really? Right. Come on, man. And that's not the only person he's done that with.
All right. 3:24. We got time for this one? What do you think?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, it's not. This is the shortest piece probably of anything I had.
All right, let's do it.
All right. So I think it's worth paying a little attention to World War III watch here. We haven't been covering this too much lately. So Putin put out a very conciliatory video right after the right on the day of the inauguration.
Also open for dialogue with the new US administration on the Ukrainian conflict. The most important thing here is to eliminate the fundamental reason for the conflict. That's the most important. And as for settling the situation itself, its goal should be not a brief ceasefire, not just getting some time to regroup and rearm and carry on the conflict, but a long-term peace based on respect to lawful interests of all people and nationalities living in the region. And of course, we're going to fight for the interests of Russia and its people. This is actually the goal and point of the special military operation.
Okay, now to Keaton's point, yes, thousands, perhaps tens of thousands internationally have been cycled through the transgender industrial complex. But not only is there still room for feminine men and masculine women, a lot of them are Trump supporters. Days for Trump.
Yeah.
The moment Trump was sworn in.
See, I told you they were out there.
They're out there. They're out there and they're supporting Trump, apparently. In Russian President Vladimir Putin declares on state TV that he's ready for long-term peace with Ukraine and says Russia is open for dialogue with President Trump. Peace through Trump, day one. They're very excited. But you know who's not reading the room? Our old friend Zelensky, who wants to send American troops to the front lines.
It's great if we will have troops. Yeah. But we have to understand that the troops will not be in the center of the capital.
Yes.
They will not have relaxed time. Yes, it's very important because I heard that some allies said that yes, but it's okay. We can be in the center of some city, and then no, we don't need such contingent.
You want them at the front line?
Yes, with our people, of course. Yes, because this means security, and that's it. So, but it can't be. It can't be without the United States. I will explain you why. Even if some European friends think that it can be, no, it will not be. First of all, nobody will risk without the United States. The second, that's what can divide NATO, divide EU and USA. That is a goal and dream of Putin, to divide this unity.
All right. Read the room, man. Read the room. Of all times to go in front of a camera and say, we want American troops at the front lines in this war, you picked now.
Yeah, I mean.
Wow. Okay, so, however, maybe he'll get his wish because Trump did not respond to Putin's conciliatory video as he might have hoped. He instead he threatened. President Donald Trump on Wednesday threatened to impose high levels of sanctions on Russia and tariffs on imports from there if the country did not reach a settlement to end its nearly 3-year-old war against Ukraine. Trump's warning, made in a social media post, where else would he make it, on his third day as president, called out Russian President Vladimir Putin by name. I'm not looking to hurt Russia. I love the Russian people and always had a very good relationship with President Putin. And this despite the radical left's Russia hoax. We must never forget that Russia helped us win the Second World War, losing almost 60 million lives in the process. Now, that's very Trump to say something that usually an American president would not concede.
Right.
But then to get the numbers wrong.
Well, yeah, the numbers are off by
yes,
100%, basically.
Even the biggest Russia shills do not make claims of those kinds of numbers.
It's like what, 30 million between 25 and 30. Right?
Yes,
yeah,
exactly.
So, yeah.
All of that being said, I'm going to do Russia, whose economy is failing, and President Putin a very big favor. Settle now and stop this ridiculous war. It's only going to get worse if we don't make a deal. And soon I have no other choice but to put high levels of taxes, tariffs, and sanctions on anything being sold by Russia to the United States and various other participating countries. Let's get this war, which never would have started if I were president, over with. We can do it the easy way or the hard way, and the easy way is always better. It's time to make a deal. No more lives should be lost. I don't know where he learned to use quotation marks. I really don't. Okay, so hang on, my screen froze. There we go.
There you go.
I told you I gotta empty my cache. All right, so our friend Danny Haifong here. This is not American decline is over. This is American decline. An empire that kicks and screams sanctions and bombs. No solutions, only offers of war. It's a new world, and if Trump follows this route, he'll be as lame duck as Biden was before too long. Now, not to quarrel with Danny, but he came in a lame duck. You can only serve one term. Rachel Blevins here. Trump really seems to think he can strong-arm Putin into a deal. Someone needs to tell him that Russia is already the most sanctioned nation in the world. Its economy is doing just fine, and it's actively beating not only Ukraine, but all of NATO. Clandestine here. Trump puts out a statement about ending the war in Ukraine. Putin just spoke with Xi yesterday and reiterated that he is ready to negotiate with Trump. Meanwhile, Zelensky is begging Trump for U.S. troops to help Ukraine, which is never going to happen. Peace is on the way, MAGA! So there you go. A little range of views there. Does Putin sit down with him? I'm not going to argue. A lot of Trump fans will always point out, don't you get it? It's a negotiating tactic. There's some truth to that. That part of this is, he's a New York businessman. He goes to the extreme and starts from there. And yeah, okay, granted. It's a little early to say how this will go. I would say ultimately, Zelensky is really picking the wrong moment to make that kind of a request. That's not going to happen. I would think we will actually see peace talks starting pretty soon, in spite of Trump's hyper-heated rhetoric there.
Yeah, I think he has to come out and say that because he has to look like he's in charge, right? He has to look like he is leading the negotiation. And that things are happening in response to him. That's not just, on a personal level, I'm sure he wants to be presented that way. He wants to be interpreted that way. But also, I think, he feels it's important for America to be seen as taking a leadership role. And this is why, ultimately Trump is pro-American hegemony. He doesn't really want a multipolar world. Right. He really does believe in our place as the dominant superpower. And what that means is that we have to, if we can't get a deal on our terms, we at least have to make it look like we did.
Right.
And I think that's probably why he's opening with, yes, what Rachel said there is 100% right. I mean, the idea that you're going to scare the Russians at this point into taking less than what they want is just kind of absurd. I think opening there is a way to look like he's in charge of this. And that makes it easier for him to claim the political win when a peace deal is reached. And it also saves some kind of face with the real sort of neocon Ukraine hawk wing of the Republican Party, who's probably not thrilled about his plans to wind down the war in Ukraine. It gives them something to say that, hey, America took the lead, right?
Trump forced Putin to the table.
Right, we forced him to the table. Don't forget, these fucking dipshits have been advocating for every war of their lifetimes. We've won none of them. America doesn't win wars anymore. So, like, a defeat in a war doesn't stop them.
Defense contractors win.
Right, well, exactly. It doesn't stop them from supporting the next war. So they don't really need a win. They need a rationale, right? They need a way they can package this in a way that makes sense to, I won't even say their voters at this point because none of the Republican base wants this, but to their donors and to their sort of web of interest that, hey, look, this is one area of tension between us and Donald Trump, but we were able to steer him into a way of settling this on our terms. I think everybody kind of knows that's bullshit, but at a certain point, I think they just kind of accept that and they don't really care too much.
I mean, at this point, we're not a country with an arms industry. We're an arms industry with a country.
Yeah, right. Exactly. Yeah.
Like we get out of this war, we'll be in another one.
Yeah, we'll be in another one. Exactly.
Exactly.
So I think that's probably where he's coming from there. All right, let's take some more super chats and rumble rants, and then we got to close the lights on this stream. Cool Blue, thank you for sorting out the X exchange involving Brett Weinstein and Walter Kern against Whitney Webb. I wasn't following it well. I respected Kern, liked his post-election 2024 take, but now ... Thank you, Cool Blue. Eric Rousseau, so MAGA has their own Bernie-style podcast, grifters like TYT and BP. Join the post-duopoly MAGA. There you go. Thanks, Eric Rousseau. Violent Fembot, we need our own opensecrets.org for influencers. It would illuminate much. Thank you, Violent Fembot.
You know what? You're right. That would be very interesting to see.
Yeah, that would be interesting. Kay Cotwas, please check out this incredible talk by Orthodox Christian Paul Kingsworth against Christian civilization, a brutal critique of using Jesus as a means to the ultimate end of saving the West. Thank you. Crystal Waters, Keaton and Russ and Whitney, the antidote to Xanax. Thank you, Crystal Waters. Appreciate that.
Thank you
very much. I have to read her book now. K Martini 2021. Yeah, I gotta get it. Whitney, it's all a big nothing. Brett, fucking albacore around my neck. Thank you, K Martini. Appreciate that. Healing Tarzan, thank you. Ironic Weinstein using the David and Goliath analogy, given he supports the imperial giant crushing Palestinians. And yes, clearly when it comes to Zionism, everyone is in on it. Yep, I agree. Theater and a Fire. Keaton, how is mental illness diagnosed? By the patients presenting symptoms. There are no tests. The DSM-5 removed homosexuality and added gender dysphoria. Use your head. Thank you. I don't know what that's exactly in reference to, but I have an idea. Eric Rousseau. So does Russell Brand finding Jesus get him a cool discount on Shmuley text?
Probably.
Yeah.
They're working on a
Kentex,
vibrating egg.
Yeah, exactly. Had a hardcore atheist shipmate in the Navy who ran a similar path to Russell Brand. The shipmate ran into all kinds of UCMJ trouble overseas and somehow found Jesus to help save his ship. Thank you, Ken Texican. I mean, save his career that allowed him to safely retire. Thank you, Ken Texican. Appreciate that very much. RB Ham, yes, Russell was batshit crazy before it was cool. Next time you go on my show, I'll intend to show you some more revelations that'll make you go, All right. Thank you, RB. Appreciate that. Ravid Laz, FBI raided Diddy's home. Wouldn't be surprising if the intel agencies got some tapes of myriad celebrities, including Brand, getting Diddy with it, passing on connected people. Well, yeah, I mean, they must have gotten some shit.
Yeah, because it's pretty late that he did that baptism. I didn't realize it was that late in the year. Like, I literally think it was the day of the Rage Against the War Machine rally that he had that baptism. Because the Daily Mail article I got that picture from was published on the 28th. So it's probably like the day before that, like the 27th.
Right. Yeah, I should have said that's why I couldn't speak. Getting baptized that day.
Yeah, getting baptized.
Rachel Maddow will be the first to tell you that Roger Ailes was her mentor. Yes, thank you, Sparky. Yep. Beautiful show, guys. You are the future of media. Thank you. Michael Castillo says, I'm America first, not Israel first or Ukraine first. Thank you, Michael Castillo. And says, Keaton, I think you could do a good Bill Gates impersonation. All right. You know, I have Bill Gates always struck me as such a Bill Gates always struck me as such a normal and boring guy. I never thought to try, but maybe I will.
He probably could.
It's a good idea.
You got a good ear.
I just watched that CIA ad again and saw that it's called Humans of CIA. Makes you wonder who else works there. Yeah, right. That's a good one. I like that. Thank you, Gavin. Halima, too legit. I'm not surprised by Russell. I always saw his BS. He's an opportunist and not genuine about anything. He's a grifter, always was. Thank you, Halima. Like I said, I didn't view him that way.
I didn't see that.
Yeah,
I didn't watch him all the time.
Yeah.
But you know, he had some great moments on Bill Maher. On what was he on Morning Joe?
Yeah. Oh, he was terrific. I mean, he wasn't like by the time he got his own show and stuff like that. When was that? Well, the thing is, it's hard to remember because he was on YouTube for a while and then they screwed him because of the accusations and he switched to Rumble. Yeah. So, yeah. Have you guys seen the AI diddler versions of Diddy's I'll Be Missing You? First two lines. It's always hard when I pipe you down. Johnson & Johnson spilled. Jesus Christ. Thanks, Ravid Laz. Appreciate that. I am an only fan of Whitney. I would be happy to get caught in her web. For initiations, what does she use instead on an egg? I jest. Thank you, El Casador. See, with chats like that, it's going to be a slam dunk getting her on this show.
Oh,
yeah. Has the Epstein and Diddy list been released by Trump yet? Not caught up on the news. Would love Ms. Webb to connect the dots on that list. No, that has not been released yet. Gotta start petitioning Kash Patel on that. Did he get confirmed yet? His confirmation hasn't happened yet.
No, it hasn't. I don't think so. No.
Those will be fun.
We would have heard about that.
Yeah. Be Donald Trump story hour. Vinegaroon, Germany has the most expensive energy rapid deindustrialization thanks to Biden sabotage. Now Trump's demand of 5% of GDP for NATO equals half of Germany's domestic federal budget. Thank you for that, my friend. Appreciate that. AKY Woman 1, I think Brand might suffer from bipolar disorder based on past experience, not being facetious, but a grifter too. Well, that's like Elon. They say Elon, he's not, he didn't mean to do that. He has autism, Autistic kids do Hitler salutes all the time.
They do that always.
Yeah, they do that all the time. It's their way of saying hello.
It's well, that's in DSM-5 actually. That's one of the ways you can identify autism.
Exactly. Yeah. Zelensky has to meet the same fate as President Diem. Thank you. And Sparky, Trump said Russia has 1 million killed in Ukraine. It's actually far fewer than 100K. It's 10 dead Ukrainians to 1 dead Russian. Trump's people, Intel and MSM, are still blowing smoke up Trump's ass. Yeah, I saw he read off some death numbers that seemed out of left field by just about everyone's standards. He said 1 million Russians and 700,000 Ukrainians had been killed, which, again, that's...
Well, yeah, I mean, it's like the 60 million Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
It's
exactly.
Trump. He just says shit.
That's Trump. I broke up with my OnlyFans girlfriends. I realized CEO is an AIPAC donor. Zionists are very invested in the porn industry, and Americans are unwittingly killing Palestinians. Thank you for that. All right, folks, we have to close the lights on this stream. Long one, but a good one. Thank you so much for being here today. Appreciate you all. We are back on the channel Sunday night, 7 p.m. Eastern, and then patron show next Monday. So we'll be seeing a lot of you guys next week. Thank you guys very, very much for being here today. Appreciate you spending the afternoon with us. Until we see you again, be safe and be well.
Courage!
Please clap.